Wherever Jesus walked, the broken places of the world began to answer him. Dusty roads, crowded doorways, fishing boats, synagogue floors, village bedsides, lonely hillsides, and sealed tombs all became places where heaven leaned close to earth. The first miracle did not begin in a palace, but at a wedding where the wine had quietly run out. Now, let the world grow quiet around you. Let the day loosen its grip. Let your breathing slow. This is the Shepherd's Bible. Tonight, we walk through the miracles of Jesus, not as a catalogue of wonders, not as a loud display of power, not as scattered marvels gathered for astonishment alone. We walk through them as the Gospels give them to us, signs of the kingdom drawing near, acts of mercy offered to real people, and windows opened into the heart and authority of the Son of God. The land before us is Galilee and Judea, with their roads of pale dust and their villages folded into hills. It is the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, where fishermen washed their nets in the morning and pulled their boats onto stones at night. It is Capernaum, with its synagogue and crowded houses. It is Cana, where joy nearly failed at a wedding feast. It is the wilderness grass, where hungry thousands sat down in ordered groups and found bread in their hands. It is Bethany, where grief filled a house and a tomb stood closed until the voice of Jesus called the dead man out. The world of the Gospels is not a world free from sorrow. It is full of sickness, shame, hunger, uncleanness, fear, spiritual torment, blindness, paralysis, poverty, rejection, and death. People bring their wounds into the open because they have heard that Jesus is near. Fathers come for sons. Mothers plead for daughters. Friends tear open a roof. A woman reaches through a crowd. Lepers stand at a distance. Blind men cry out beside the road. Disciples tremble in a storm. Sisters weep beside a grave. And Jesus does not turn away. He sees the forgotten. He touches the unclean. He speaks peace to fear. He commands the wind. He feeds the hungry. He opens blind eyes. He forgives sin. He restores dignity. He frees those bound by darkness. He calls death by name, and death obeys. The miracles are not magic. They are not tricks. They are not performances to impress the powerful. Jesus often avoids empty spectacle. He withdraws from crowds who would misunderstand him. He warns some not to spread the report too quickly. He heals because mercy moves him. He acts because the Father is working. He gives signs so that faith may awaken, and so that those with eyes to see may understand that the kingdom of God has drawn near in him. The Gospels show us that his authority is not cold. His power is not distant. The same Jesus who can command creation also notices one trembling woman in a crowd. The same Jesus who can multiply bread for thousands also speaks tenderly to a dead child, as though waking her from sleep. The same Jesus who can raise Lazarus from the tomb first weeps with those who weep. So we will not rush. We will move slowly, as one might walk a road at evening with lamps beginning to glow in the houses. We will pause at doorways. We will hear the sea under a night wind. We will stand beside stone water jars at Cana, beside a mat carried by friends, beside a pool where a man has waited too long, beside a hillside where bread is placed into tired hands, beside a tomb where grief has nearly become final. Every miracle will point beyond itself. Each sign will open like a small window onto something larger, until the greatest sign of all, the death and resurrection of Jesus himself, gathers every other one into its light. Still, the people in these stories are not symbols first. They are people. A father pacing the long road home while clinging to a promise. A centurion who understands authority and yet comes with humility. A man with leprosy kneeling in the dust, daring to say, "If you want to, you can make me clean." 4 friends carrying another man because love had learned to lift what weakness could not. A woman whose body had bled for 12 years. A child lying still in her father's house. A man who had lived among tombs and then sat clothed and in his right mind. 10 lepers crying out from far away. 1 returning with gratitude. Martha and Mary speaking grief honestly before the Lord they love. The mercy of Jesus moves through all of them. And as the road goes on, the miracles gather toward the cross. This matters. The signs do not lead away from the passion. They lead toward it. The hands that touch lepers will be pierced. The voice that calls Lazarus from the tomb will itself cry out from the cross. The one who gives bread in the wilderness will give himself as the life of the world. The one who heals Malchus's ear in the garden will refuse to save himself by violence. So tonight, let the miracles become not noise, but peace. Let them come like lamps along a dark road. Let them remind the tired heart that Jesus enters ordinary human suffering with extraordinary mercy. Let them show the Lord who is gentle enough to notice tears and mighty enough to command death. And now, as the ancient road opens before us, we begin in a small village of Galilee, not with a trumpet, not with thunder, but with a wedding, a quiet lack, a mother's trust, and 6 stone jars waiting to be filled. The road to Cana was not the road to an empire's throne. It was a village road, familiar to ordinary feet, passing through the hills of Galilee where families knew the names of one another's children, and news moved quickly from house to house. The first public sign of Jesus, as John tells it, began in that quiet place, under the roof of a wedding feast. A wedding in the ancient world was not a brief event slipped between busy hours. It was a gathering of family, neighbors, music, memory, blessing, and hope. Lamps burned, voices rose, bread was shared, wine was poured. The bride and bridegroom stood at the beginning of a life joined together before God and before their people. Joy was not private. It belonged to the whole village. Jesus was there. His mother was there. His disciples were there. They had only recently begun to follow him, and the meaning of his person still lay before them like a great country not yet explored. They had heard John call him the Lamb of God. They had seen him gather them with the command, "Follow me." Nathanael had confessed him as Son of God and King of Israel, and Jesus had promised that they would see greater things than these. Now the greater things began, not with armies or angels in the open sky, but with a household embarrassment almost hidden beneath celebration. The wine ran out. It is a small sentence, but it carries the weight of human anxiety. In that setting, such a lack would have brought shame on the family. Guests were gathered. Expectations were high. A feast meant to honor covenant joy was in danger of becoming a memory of failure. Perhaps some noticed first in the movements of servants. Perhaps the pitchers grew light, and glances passed quietly between those responsible for the table. The music may still have continued, but something had begun to falter beneath it. Mary saw. The mother of Jesus noticed the need before it became public disgrace. She did not make a speech. She did not gather attention to herself. She simply brought the lack to her son. They have no wine. There is deep trust in those words. She placed the problem before him and left it there. She did not explain what he must do. She did not prescribe the manner of his help. She trusted him with the need. Jesus answered in words that carry mystery, "Woman, what does that have to do with you and me? My hour has not yet come." The word was not disrespectful. It was formal, solemn, and in the Gospel of John, it reaches beyond the wedding toward a deeper hour, the hour of the cross. Already, at the first sign, the shadow and glory of that final hour are present. The abundance of Cana is not separated from the offering of Calvary. Joy and sacrifice, wine and blood, wedding and cross, all stand within the mystery of his mission. Mary turned to the servants and spoke the sentence that has echoed through centuries of faith. Whatever he says to you, do it. It is one of the purest instructions in Scripture. Not look at me, not do what I imagine, not force him to act in the way you want. Simply, whatever he says to you, do it. There were 6 stone water jars there, set for the Jews' way of purification, each holding a great amount. They were ordinary objects of religious and household life, heavy with water and habit, standing nearby as servants moved through the feast. Jesus said, "Fill the water pots with water." The servants obeyed. Water was drawn. Water was carried. Water was poured. The jars filled slowly, perhaps with the sound of liquid striking stone, rising higher and higher until they were filled to the brim. No chant was spoken over them. No public announcement was made. No one gathered the guests to watch a spectacle. Obedience happened quietly in the servants' hands. Then Jesus said, "Now draw some out and take it to the ruler of the feast." They took it. Somewhere between the filling and the drawing, between the command and the tasting, water had become wine. The servants knew. Jesus knew. Mary knew. The ruler of the feast did not know where it had come from. He tasted, and instead of finding a desperate substitute, he found excellent wine. He called the bridegroom and marveled that the good wine had been kept until now. The sign was generous. It was more than enough. The jars were not half filled. They were filled to the brim. The wine was not poor. It was better than what had come before. Jesus did not merely rescue a family from shame. He revealed the character of the kingdom as abundance beyond expectation, joy restored where it had begun to fail, and grace arriving quietly at the edge of embarrassment. This beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The glory was quiet, but it was real. No trumpet sounded. The guests may have continued laughing, unaware that the first sign of the Messiah had taken place in their midst. The bridegroom received praise for what he had not provided. The servants carried a secret of glory in their memory. The disciples saw, and faith deepened. There is comfort in the gentleness of Cana. Jesus did not begin his signs by humiliating a household or frightening a village. He began by preserving joy. He entered a human celebration, noticed the hidden lack, and gave more than was asked. He honored the trust of his mother. He involved the obedience of servants. He used water jars meant for purification and filled the feast with wine. The miracle speaks softly to anyone whose joy has run thin. There are moments when life still appears outwardly arranged. The music continues. The lamps still burn. People still expect us to smile. But beneath the surface, Something has quietly run out. Patience, hope, strength, prayer, peace. We may not even know how to name it. We only know the vessels feel empty. Cana says, "Bring the lack to Jesus. Do not tell him how he must answer. Do not assume the shortage is too small for his care. Do not suppose that because the need is not dramatic, it is unseen by him. Let Mary teach the heart to trust. Let the servants teach the hands to obey. Fill what he tells you to fill. Draw when he tells you to draw. Carry what you do not fully understand." At Cana, mercy began to move in a way that felt almost hidden. But the road would not remain hidden. From that village feast, the signs would move toward bedsides, synagogues, roads, storms, wilderness hills, and tombs. The same Lord who kept joy from failing at a wedding would soon speak life across a distance, and a father would learn that no road is too long for the healing word of Jesus. There is another quiet lesson hidden in the jars of Cana. The servants did not understand the whole sign while they were obeying it. They knew the task in front of them, but not the glory that would be revealed through it. They carried water, not knowing that they were carrying the first public sign of the Messiah. They filled stone jars, perhaps with tired arms and practical attention, not knowing that the disciples would later remember this moment as the beginning of his signs. That is often how obedience feels. It may not feel radiant in the moment. It may feel ordinary, repetitive, and small. Fill the jar. Carry the water. Draw it out. Take it to another person. Yet when the command comes from Jesus, ordinary obedience becomes the vessel of hidden glory. The servants did not create the wine, but they were allowed to participate in the sign. Their hands moved where his word directed them, and the feast received joy. The disciples believed in him, but this belief was still young. Faith often begins with a first glimpse, not full understanding. They saw enough to follow more deeply, enough to wonder, enough to know that the one they had begun to follow was unlike any other teacher. The wedding ended, but the sign remained in them. They would need that memory later, when crowds pressed in, when opposition rose, when the hour he mentioned at Cana finally came. So Cana stands at the threshold of all the miracles as a gentle beginning. The Lord of glory is present in human joy. The mother of Jesus teaches trust. The servants teach obedience. The jars teach abundance. The disciples learn to believe. And the listener is invited to notice that the mercy of Christ may begin quietly, where a lack is noticed before it becomes a public wound. After Cana, the mercy of Jesus did not stay within one village. News began to travel the roads of Galilee. A sign had been given. Some had seen more than others. The disciples carried the memory of stone jars and wine kept until last. But Jesus was not a wonder worker seeking fame. He moved through the land with the calm authority of one whose words and works were one with the Father. The next signs would show something different from Cana. At the wedding, the servants filled jars, drew out wine, and carried it to the ruler of the feast. But soon people would learn that Jesus did not need to stand beside the sickbed in order to heal. Distance did not limit him. The need could be far away, hidden in another house, behind another doorway, beneath another roof. His word could go where his feet had not yet gone. In Cana again, there came a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. He was a man with status, but status cannot keep fever from a child's body. It cannot purchase certainty when a beloved son lies near death. It cannot command the soul to remain calm when every breath from the child sounds fragile. The official had heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, and he went to him. The road from Capernaum to Cana was not short, especially for a man carrying fear. Every step must have been heavy with urgency. When he found Jesus, he begged him to come down and heal his son, for the boy was at the point of death. Here is a father, stripped down to his deepest need. Whatever honor he had in Herod's court, whatever authority he carried in ordinary life, he came as a pleading parent. He was asking not for an idea, not for a discussion, not for comfort only, but for life. Jesus spoke words that tested and revealed, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will in no way believe." The official did not argue. He did not defend his motives. He simply pressed his need into one sentence, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Come down. That was the shape of his hope. He believed Jesus could heal if Jesus came to the house. He believed the presence of Jesus near the sickbed would change everything. But he had not yet understood the reach of the word of Christ. Jesus said to him, "Go your way. Your son lives." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him, and he went his way. That sentence is quiet, but it is a great act of faith. He turned away from Jesus without seeing the healing. He began the road home with only a promise in his hands. No visible sign accompanied him. No servant had yet arrived. No messenger had yet confirmed that the fever had broken. He walked on the authority of a word. As he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his child lived. He asked the hour when the boy began to improve. They answered that yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. The father knew that it was the same hour in which Jesus had said to him, "Your son lives." The word had traveled faster than the father. Mercy had reached the house before his feet could. The child lived. The household believed. The gospel is careful. It tells us not merely that the boy recovered, but that the father knew the hour. Faith often remembers hours. The moment the prayer was spoken. The moment the answer came. The moment one sentence from Jesus became stronger than fear. A similar lesson would unfold in another place, through the faith of a centurion. He was a man under authority and a man with authority. He knew the command structure of Rome. He knew what it meant to speak and be obeyed. Soldiers went when he said, "Go." Servants came when he said, "Come." Orders moved through distance because authority stood behind them. His servant was sick, suffering greatly, and this Gentile officer, though used to command, came with humility. In one telling, elders of the Jews spoke on his behalf. In another, the heart of the man is brought before us directly. The accounts together show both his reputation for kindness and the humility of his approach. He understood something many had not yet understood. "Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof," he said. "Just say the word, and my servant will be healed." Just say the word. The centurion did not ask Jesus to enter the house. He did not believe healing depended on physical nearness. He recognized authority. He saw in Jesus a command greater than his own, greater than illness, greater than distance. If Jesus spoke, sickness must obey. When Jesus heard it, he marveled. There are not many places in the Gospels where Jesus is said to marvel. Here, he marveled at faith. He said that he had not found such great faith, no, not in Israel. The words were astonishing, especially because they came in response to a Gentile soldier. The kingdom was already showing its wideness. Mercy was not confined by the expectations of men. The servant was healed in that hour. Again, the word of Jesus crossed distance like light crossing water. One father walked home from Cana with a promise. One centurion trusted that a command spoken by Jesus was enough. In both stories, the healing word reveals that Jesus' authority is not tied to touch, place, or human method. He does not need to be frantic. He does not need to hurry. He speaks, and life answers. This is not cold authority. It is merciful authority. The word that commands creation also leans towards suffering households. It enters the room where a child burns with fever. It enters the quarters where a servant lies weak. It meets people whose homes are tense with waiting. It turns mourning back from the door. For sleep and prayer, there is a deep comfort here. We often want Jesus to come in the exact way we imagine. Come down before my child dies. Come under my roof. Touch this place in the manner I understand. But the Gospels gently widen the heart. His mercy can travel beyond our sight. His command can reach where our hands cannot. His word is not hindered by walls, roads, miles, sickness, or time. That does not make prayer a technique. It makes prayer trust. The Father did not control Jesus. The centurion did not manipulate him. They came in humility, and both were taught that the Lord's authority is greater than they knew. The road from Cana to Capernaum, the space between Jesus and the sick, the unseen distance between spoken promise and visible answer, all became part of the sign. Faith was asked to walk before sight arrived, and still the mercy of Jesus kept moving. Some would be healed by his word from far away. Others would be healed when he came near enough to touch. And one man, kept outside the normal life of Israel by a disease that carried loneliness as well as pain, would soon kneel before Jesus in the dust and find that holiness was not afraid to lay a hand upon him. The healing word also teaches the difference between seeking Jesus for control and trusting him with surrender. The official wanted Jesus to come down. The centurion believed Jesus did not need to come. Both men brought real need. Both were met with mercy, but each was also drawn beyond the shape of his first request. Jesus did not despise the Father's urgency, and he did not ignore the centurion's humility. He received the fear of one and the faith of the other, and in both houses life was restored. This is one reason the gospel stories remain so comforting. They do not show one single manner of approaching Jesus. Some kneel, some send elders, some cry out, some reach silently, some ask clearly, some barely know what they are asking. The Lord is not confused by the variety of human need. He meets each person truthfully. He may test, delay, question, or praise, but he is never careless. The official's walk home is especially tender for anyone living between prayer and visible answer. He had to travel the road while not yet seeing what Jesus had done. Perhaps the hills seemed longer on the way back. Perhaps his mind repeated the words, "Your son lives." Perhaps fear tried to answer back. Faith does not mean the road home feels easy. It means the word of Jesus becomes stronger than the fear that walks beside us. When the servants finally arrived, they did not bring possibility. They brought news. The child lived. The hour matched the word. The father discovered that while he had been walking in faith, mercy had already reached his house. The same voice that had reached a dying child across the miles would soon reach a man whom no one dared to come near. Among all the people who came to Jesus, few carried a loneliness like the leper. Leprosy in the gospel world was not only illness, it was separation. A man with such a disease lived with the pain of his body and the sorrow of distance from the community. He could not enter ordinary gatherings, as others did. He could not share the easy nearness of household life. His condition marked him publicly. His presence warned others away. The law guarded Israel from uncleanness, and the sufferer lived at the edge, seen and avoided at the same time. Imagine the days of such a man. The roads were walked at a distance. Conversations were shortened by fear. Meals were not shared in the warmth of a family table as before. The sound of children might come from far off, but not into his arms. The touch of another human being, that simple mercy most people receive without noticing, became rare or absent. He lived with skin wounded and spirit wounded also. Then Jesus came down from a mountain, and great crowds followed him. The leper came. That alone was courage. The crowd could have recoiled. Men could have shouted him back. He had learned to expect rejection. But need has its own kind of boldness when hope has appeared. He came and knelt before Jesus. Lord, if you want to, you can make me clean. The words are beautiful because they contain both faith and submission. He does not say, if you can. He says, if you want to. He believes in the power of Jesus. The question in his mind is not ability, but mercy. How many hearts have prayed something similar in quieter form? Lord, I know you are able, but do you see me? Lord, I know you are powerful, but will your mercy come near to this wound? Lord, I know others have received help, but will you reach toward me? Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. That is the heart of the scene. He touched him before speaking the cleansing. Holiness came into contact with uncleanness, and uncleanness did not pass into Jesus. Instead, cleanness passed from Jesus to the man. The direction of power was reversed. The disease that had driven others away met the Son of God and found no fear in him. I want to, Jesus said, be made clean. Immediately, his leprosy was cleansed. Immediately. The word falls like clear water. The man who had been untouchable was touched. The skin that had carried visible shame was restored. The distance that had defined his life began to collapse. The man could return. He could be seen not as danger, but as brother. He could stand before the priest, offer what Moses commanded, and bear witness to what God had done. Jesus told him to say nothing to anyone, but to show himself to the priest and offer the gift commanded in the law. The command honored the law. The miracle did not despise Israel's holiness. It fulfilled mercy within it. The cleansed man was to be restored in the way God had given, with witness and order, not merely excitement. But the report spread. How could it not? A man whose life had been defined by exclusion was whole. A face once avoided could now be looked upon. Hands once feared could now touch and be touched. The news moved through villages and roads, and people came to Jesus from every direction. In Mark's telling, the spreading report becomes so great that Jesus can no longer openly enter a city, but stays in deserted places. The irony is tender and costly. The man who had been outside could return inside, while Jesus, because of the spreading fame of the miracle, moved outside into lonely places. Mercy gave the leper back his place, and Jesus accepted the cost. This miracle reveals more than healing. It reveals the heart of Jesus toward those who wonder if they are too defiled, too isolated, too marked by visible or invisible shame. The answer is not given first in explanation, but in a hand stretched out. I want to. Those words matter. Jesus is not reluctant mercy, dragged toward compassion by human pleading. He is willing. He is moved. He reaches. He restores. His touch is not careless. It is holy. He does not erase the seriousness of uncleanness by pretending it is nothing. He overcomes it by the greater seriousness of divine mercy. The scene is quiet enough to rest in. A man kneeling in dust, a crowd drawing breath, a hand extended, skin restored, a life returned. Some miracles take place in households, some on waves, some in wilderness. This one takes place at the border between isolation and belonging. The true wonder is not only that diseased skin became clean, it is that Jesus crossed the human distance everyone else had kept. The leper had said, "If you want to." Jesus answered both by word and by touch. "I want to be clean." And the man was clean. There is rest for the soul in that. At times, a person may carry a hidden form of leprosy in the heart. Not the disease itself, but the feeling of being untouchable, too ashamed, too complicated, too worn down, too marked by what has happened or by what has been done. Such a heart may keep its distance even from God, as though the Lord is as hesitant as people can be. But the gospel gives us Jesus on the road, unafraid of the one who kneels before him. He does not become unclean by touching the unclean. He makes clean. He does not lose holiness by entering the place of need. He reveals what holiness truly is. And once the man is cleansed, the road does not end. Jesus continues, and need continues to find him. Some will come kneeling in the open. Others will be carried by friends because they cannot come by their own strength. Soon, in a house so crowded that even the doorway cannot hold another body, faith will climb above the room, tear open a roof, and lower a paralyzed man into the presence of Jesus. The touch of Jesus also carries a quiet answer to the fear that holiness must keep away from what is wounded. In the old order, uncleanness could spread by contact. Touch could transmit defilement. But in Jesus, holiness moves outward with cleansing power. The leper does not make him unclean. Jesus makes the leper clean. The direction is changed because the Holy One has come in flesh. This does not make the law meaningless. Jesus sends the man to the priest, honoring the testimony required by Moses. The healed man is not restored by emotion alone, but by mercy that takes seriously the public path of return. He is to re-enter life rightly, with witness before those appointed to examine cleansing. In that way, the miracle is not only personal relief, it is restoration to worship and community. Imagine the first time the man touched another person after the healing. The gospel does not describe it, but the reality is there. A hand no longer feared, a shoulder embraced, a place at a table, a voice heard without people stepping back. The miracle restored countless small human gifts that had been taken from him. Jesus gave him back the ordinary mercies that healthy people often forget are mercies at all. For the long night of listening, this scene asks the heart to rest in a holiness that is not fragile. Jesus is not easily contaminated by what burdens us. We do not need to stand far away forever, shouting our need from a distance as though mercy might be offended by nearness. The leper came. Jesus touched. Cleansing answered. The leper's restoration also helps us understand why crowds kept coming even when Jesus withdrew. People were not merely curious. Some were desperate. They had heard that a man no one could touch had been touched. They had heard that a disease no one could cure had yielded. News like that travels differently from ordinary rumor. It carries hope into houses where hope has grown thin. Still, Jesus did not allow the excitement of the crowd to define the meaning of the sign. He withdrew and prayed. The more widely his fame spread, the more he remained anchored in communion with the Father. This protects the whole story from becoming a chase after wonders. The miracles are real, but Jesus is not managed by public hunger for the miraculous. He is the Son who acts in perfect obedience. For the cleansed leper, the command to show himself to the priest would have meant walking toward a future that had seemed closed. Each step toward examination was a step away from exile. The body was clean, but the life also needed to be reknit into the community. That restoration took path, witness, and obedience. Mercy did not leave him standing alone with a private miracle. It sent him toward restored belonging. As word of the cleansed leper traveled from village to village, more and more of the hurting set out to find Jesus. The mercy of Jesus filled houses until the houses could no longer contain the people who came. In Capernaum, when word spread that he was at home, many gathered. The doorway filled. The room pressed tight with listeners. People stood shoulder to shoulder, leaning close to hear him speak the word. The air would have been warm, with breath and dust. Outside, others waited, hoping for a glimpse, a sentence, a healing, some sign that the mercy they had heard about might reach them also. In that city, there was a man who was paralyzed. He could not make his own way through the streets as others did. His world depended on the strength and compassion of others. Someone had to lift him. Someone had to carry him. Someone had to decide that his need was worth the trouble. 4 men carried him to Jesus. The Gospels do not give us their names. They are remembered by their faith and their action. They came bearing the weight of another man's helplessness. Perhaps they had known him for years. Perhaps they had watched hope fade in his eyes. Perhaps they had heard of Jesus and looked at one another with the sudden quiet certainty that they must try. But when they reached the house, they could not get near because of the crowd. Many would have stopped there. The doorway was blocked. The room was full. The moment seemed lost. But love can become inventive when faith refuses to turn away. They carried the man up to the roof. Imagine the careful labor of it. The stretcher lifted, feet searching for balance, hands gripping the mat, dust loosening under the heat of the day. Below, Jesus continued teaching. Above, the roof began to open. Piece by piece, they removed what stood between the paralyzed man and Christ. Then they lowered the mat, slowly, into the crowded room. Down through dust and sudden light came the man who could not bring himself. Faces turned upward. The teaching paused. A space opened beneath the broken roof. The mat settled before Jesus. Jesus saw their faith. Not only the faith of the paralyzed man, though surely his own heart was present there. He saw their faith. Faith had hands that day. Faith had shoulders. Faith climbed, dug, lifted, lowered, and refused to let the crowd be the final word. "Son," Jesus said, "your sins are forgiven you." That was not what everyone expected. The visible problem was paralysis. The obvious request was bodily healing. But Jesus began deeper. He spoke to the man's need before God. He called him son. He gave forgiveness. In the room were scribes and Pharisees, sitting and reasoning in their hearts. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Their question, though hardened by suspicion, touched the truth. Forgiveness of sins belongs to God. To speak forgiveness with authority is no small matter. Jesus knew their thoughts and asked why they reasoned these things in their hearts. Which is easier, to say to the paralyzed man, "Your sins are forgiven," or to say, "Arise, take up your mat, and walk"? Both words are impossible for mere man. One cannot be verified by sight as quickly as the other. So Jesus gave the visible sign to reveal the invisible authority, that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He said to the paralyzed man, "I tell you, arise, take up your mat, and go to your house." The man arose. Strength entered limbs that had not obeyed him. The body answered Jesus. He stood in the room where he had been lowered helpless. He lifted the mat that had carried him. The thing that once bore him was now borne by him. He went out before them all. The crowd was amazed and glorified God, saying they had never seen anything like this. This miracle is one of the clearest windows into the fullness of Jesus' mission. He did not come merely to improve circumstances. He came to reconcile sinners to God. The healing of the body was true and merciful, but it served the revelation of something even greater. The Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. For the paralyzed man, that day became a whole restoration. He entered through the roof, unable to move and burdened by sin, as every human being is. He left walking, forgiven, carrying his mat through a path the astonished crowd had to open for him. There is a tenderness in the word son. Jesus did not call him case, interruption, problem, or spectacle. He called him son. He spoke belonging before command. The man lying before him was not merely a body needing repair. He was a soul needing mercy, a person seen completely by the Lord. And there is also a tenderness in the friends. Some people reach Jesus because others carry them. There are seasons in which the body is weak, the mind is tired, the will is dim, and prayer itself feels like a mat on which one lies rather than a road one can walk. In such seasons, the faith of friends matters. A mother prays, a father carries, a neighbor helps, a church gathers, a companion refuses to leave the door blocked. The Gospels preserve those unnamed men as a quiet encouragement. They did not preach a sermon. They opened a roof. The house where Jesus taught became the house where forgiveness and healing met. Dust fell from above, and mercy rose from below. Religious leaders questioned. A paralyzed man stood. A mat was lifted. The crowd glorified God. The road did not end at one healing. The authority that forgave sins and strengthened limbs would soon enter the rhythms of Sabbath, that holy day given for rest and worship. There, too, Jesus would reveal the heart of God. He would show that the Sabbath was not meant to become a cold barrier against mercy, but a day where the goodness of God could make the bound stand straight, the withered stretch out, and the long-waiting rise. It is worth lingering over the roof itself. The friends did not destroy a house in reckless disregard. They found a way where there seemed to be no way. In the architecture of that world, roofs were accessible and repairable, but the act still required boldness. Dust must have fallen into the room. People below must have shifted, murmured, perhaps objected. Faith sometimes disturbs the settled arrangement of a room because love refuses to leave a suffering person outside. Jesus did not rebuke the interruption. He did not say that teaching had been spoiled. He did not complain about the dust or the crowd or the inconvenience. He saw faith. That is a beautiful phrase. Jesus saw their faith. He saw what was invisible in the heart because it had become visible in action. The opened roof was a confession without words. The order of His mercy matters. First forgiveness, then walking. Jesus begins where the deepest paralysis lies. Sin is not always the direct cause of a particular illness, and the Gospels guard us from making that careless judgment. But every human being needs forgiveness. The man lowered through the roof received what only God can give, and then his restored body became the public sign that the forgiveness was not empty speech. When he walked out carrying his mat, the crowd had to make room for the mercy it had once blocked. Those who could not let him in now watched him go out. The house itself became a witness. No crowd is too thick, no roof too closed, no weakness too heavy when faith carries a person to Jesus. Yet not every healing was met with wonder. Some came on the one day that others believed should be left untouched. The Sabbath was a gift before it became a dispute. From the beginning, God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. For Israel, Sabbath carried memory and mercy. It remembered creation. It remembered deliverance from Egypt. It gave rest to servants, animals, households, and strangers. It taught the people that life was not sustained by labor alone, and the time itself belonged to God. But in the days of Jesus, around that holy gift had grown many arguments and anxieties. The desire to guard the Sabbath was not in itself evil. Israel had learned, through painful history, that disregard for God's law brings sorrow. Yet a holy command can be handled in an unholy way when mercy is forgotten. The day of rest can be treated as though God is honored by leaving suffering untouched. Jesus entered that tension with calm authority. In a synagogue, there was a man with a withered hand. A hand is not a small part of a life. It works, lifts, blesses, breaks bread, holds a child's fingers, receives and gives. A withered hand meant visible weakness and daily limitation. In the synagogue, among worshippers and watchers, this man stood as more than a question of law. He stood as a person in need. Some watched Jesus closely to see whether he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. Jesus knew. He told the man to stand up in the midst. The hidden test became public. Then he asked a question that carried the Sabbath back to the heart of God. Is it lawful on the Sabbath day to do good or to do harm, to save a life or to kill? They were silent. The silence was heavy. A man stood there with a withered hand. The answer should have been clear. Mercy was not a violation of God's rest. Mercy was the rest of God entering a broken life. Jesus looked around at them with grief over the hardness of their hearts. Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and it was restored whole like the other. The command asked him to do what weakness had made impossible. But the word of Jesus supplied what it commanded. The hand opened. Strength returned. A life narrowed by disability widened again in the middle of Sabbath worship. On another Sabbath, Jesus taught in a synagogue where there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity 18 years. She was bent over and could in no way straighten herself. 18 years is long enough for a body to learn its sorrow, long enough for the eyes to grow used to the ground, long enough for neighbors to stop expecting change. She had looked down through seasons, feasts, market days, and prayers. The sky was above her, but she could not lift herself to see it fully. Jesus saw her. He called her near and said, "Woman, you are freed from your infirmity." He laid his hands on her. Immediately, she stood up straight and glorified God. What a gentle and mighty scene. A woman whose body had been folded toward the earth now stood upright in the synagogue, praise rising from her restored frame. The Lord did not wait for her to find him in the crowd. He saw her. He called her. He freed her. He touched her. The ruler of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, told the crowd that there were 6 days in which people ought to work, and therefore they should come to be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath. Jesus answered by revealing the inconsistency. Did not each of them loose his ox or donkey from the stall on the Sabbath and lead it away to water? Should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan had bound 18 years, be freed from this bondage on the Sabbath day? A daughter of Abraham. He named her dignity before them all. She was not an inconvenience to Sabbath order. She was covenant family. If an animal could be loosed and led to water, surely a daughter of Abraham could be loosed from bondage on the day made holy by the God of mercy. There was also a man at the pool of Bethesda in Jerusalem. He had been ill for 38 years. The place had 5 porches, and many sick, blind, lame, and paralyzed people lay there. It was a landscape of waiting, bodies resting in shade, eyes watching water, hope growing and fading with each movement of the pool. Jesus saw him lying there and knew he had been in that condition a long time. "Do you want to be made well?" Jesus asked. The man answered from the shape of his long disappointment, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me. I have no one." That sentence carries the ache of more than illness. It is the ache of abandonment. The man had a place near possible healing, but no one to help him reach it in time. His life had become a repeated almost. Jesus said, "Arise, take up your mat, and walk." Immediately the man was made well. He took up his mat and walked. It was the Sabbath. The healing brought controversy, but it also brought revelation. Jesus would speak of his Father working, and of the Son doing what he sees the Father doing. The miracle was not random kindness detached from divine purpose. It unveiled the unity of the Son with the Father's life-giving work. In another Sabbath scene, Jesus entered the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, and a man with dropsy was before him. Jesus asked whether it was lawful to heal on the Sabbath. They were silent. He took the man, healed him, and let him go. Then he asked which of them, if a son or ox fell into a well, would not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day. Again, silence. The Sabbath miracles are not arguments for argument's sake. They are acts of restoration that reveal the Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus does not despise the day. He rescues it from a loveless reading. He shows that holiness and mercy are not enemies. The rest of God is not indifference to suffering. It is the arrival of God's restoring power among the weary. A withered hand opened. A bent daughter of Abraham stood straight. A long-waiting man at Bethesda walked. A man with dropsy was healed and released. Each scene says, in its own way, that Jesus is Lord over holy time. He does not wait for a more convenient day when mercy is needed. He does good on the Sabbath, because the Sabbath belongs to the God who made humanity for communion, rest, and life. For the listener at night, there is rest in this truth. Jesus is not offended by your need on the holy day. He is not inconvenienced by weakness in the place of worship. He does not look at the bent soul and say, "Come back when the calendar is easier." He calls, he touches, he commands, he restores. The day of rest becomes, in his hands, a day of release. And where one synagogue had seen mercy, many houses still waited. Evening would come. Lamps would be lit. Families would carry the sick through narrow streets. One quiet home would receive healing first, and then the whole doorway would fill with longing. In each Sabbath scene, there is a person who could have been treated as a problem to be debated rather than a neighbor to be loved. The man with the withered hand becomes a test case for opponents. The bent woman becomes an example in an argument about timing. The man at Bethesda becomes controversial because he carries a mat. But Jesus looks through the debate to the person. He sees the hand, the years, the loneliness, the bondage, the long waiting. That is one reason his questions cut so deeply. Is it lawful to do good or harm? Should not this daughter of Abraham be loosed? Do you want to be made well? These questions uncover the heart. They reveal whether the hearer loves the command of God as a path of life, or uses it as a wall against compassion. Jesus does not set mercy against holiness. He shows that true holiness is merciful, because God is merciful. The Sabbath healings also restore time itself. For the suffering person, years can become a burden. 18 years bent over, 38 years ill. A long season can begin to feel like identity. Jesus enters those years and proves that duration does not equal lordship. What has lasted a long time is not therefore stronger than him. A body bent 18 years can stand in a moment. A man waiting 38 years can rise at one command. For anyone who has waited long, these miracles breathe hope without forcing easy answers. The Lord knows the years. He can name the bondage. He can see the person hidden beneath routine disappointment. And when he speaks, even a long history must bow before the present mercy of God. When the disputes had faded, the mercy of Jesus returned to something simpler, the quiet of a home and the hush of evening. Some miracles are vast enough to shake a crowd. Others begin in the quiet heat of a single room. After teaching in the synagogue, Jesus entered the house of Simon Peter. There he found Simon's mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. Luke, the physician, calls it a great fever. In a world without modern medicines, fever was not a small concern. A body burning, strength drained, family watching, the ordinary rhythm of the home interrupted by illness. Jesus came near. In one gospel, he touched her hand. In another, he stood over her and rebuked the fever. In another, he took her by the hand and raised her up. Each telling gives a tender angle on the same mercy. He did not remain at a distance. He entered the room where sickness had settled. He addressed the fever as one with authority over it. He lifted her. The fever left her. Immediately, she rose and served them. This does not mean she was reduced to usefulness, as though the only value of healing was labor. Rather, her restoration was complete enough that the life of the household returned. The woman who had been lying helpless now stood in strength. Hospitality resumed. The home breathed again. There is something beautiful in this small domestic miracle. Not every sign happens before thousands. Some happen where bowls, mats, lamps, and family voices fill the space. Jesus is Lord in public places, yes, but also in rooms where one person lies fevered and afraid. The kingdom enters the house. As evening came, after the sun had set, people brought to him all who were sick and those oppressed by demons. The timing matters. The Sabbath had ended at sunset. Families who had waited now came through the streets. The whole city gathered at the door. Imagine the scene. Lamps lit in doorways, shadows lengthening against walls, mothers carrying children, men supporting fathers, neighbors helping the weak, faces marked by exhaustion and hope. The sea air may have cooled the heat of the day, and over the town came the murmur of many voices waiting outside Simon's house. Jesus received them. One by one, he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. He did not treat the crowd as a blur. The Gospels often gather the healings into a few sentences, but behind those sentences are many faces. A child restored to a parent's arms. An old man breathing freely. A woman straightening after pain. A mind returned from torment to peace. A family that had come trembling going home in wonder. Matthew sees in this the fulfillment of the prophet. He took our infirmities and bore our diseases. That word took matters. Jesus did not heal as though standing untouched by human suffering. He entered it. He bore it. The miracles of healing point toward the cross, where he would bear sin and sorrow in the deepest way. The evening healings were not detached acts of kindness. They revealed the servant who carries the burdens of his people. The doorway became a place of mercy. If Cana showed abundance in hidden joy, and the leper showed the holiness of touch, this evening in Capernaum showed the patience of Jesus with a crowd of need. The day had been full. He had taught, healed, and moved among people. Yet when evening brought the weary to the door, he did not close himself away in irritation. He welcomed the broken as they came. Still, Jesus was not consumed by the demands of the crowd. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he rose and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. The Son's mercy flowed from communion with the Father. He did not allow popularity to define his mission. When the disciples found him and said that everyone was looking for him, he answered that they must go elsewhere to the next towns, so he might preach there also, because that was why he came. He came not only to heal bodies, but to proclaim the kingdom. The healings confirmed the message. The message gave the healings their true meaning. In those days, the roads around Galilee became roads of approach. People heard that Jesus could heal. They came from villages, cities, hillsides, and shorelines. Some came openly. Some came quietly. Some came with hope. Some came because another person insisted. Some came because every other hope had failed. And Jesus moved through it all with a mercy that was strong but not frantic. He was never overwhelmed as we are overwhelmed. He felt compassion, but he did not lose his center. He saw crowds as sheep without a shepherd. He touched, spoke, lifted, rebuked sickness, and restored. He also withdrew to pray. In him, active mercy and deep communion were not divided. For a tired listener, this chapter offers a gentle image. A house at evening, a doorway filled with need, lamps burning, the day cooling. Jesus standing where the weary can reach him. It is easy to imagine ourselves somewhere in that line, not necessarily with a visible illness, though many do carry such burdens. Perhaps with anxiety, perhaps with grief, perhaps with weariness that does not fit a simple name, perhaps carrying someone else in prayer. The city gathers at the door, and Jesus receives those who come. He does not treat human need as an interruption to his holiness. His holiness is seen in the way he receives human need. The woman with fever is lifted. The crowd at evening is healed. The oppressed are freed. The house that held one act of mercy becomes the doorway through which a whole city glimpses the kingdom. The mercy of Jesus kept moving from homes to roads, from roads to synagogues, from synagogues to shorelines. Soon that mercy would step into a boat. The lake that had fed the towns of Galilee would rise beneath a storm, and the disciples would learn that the voice which rebuked fever could also rebuke the wind. The evening healings also reveal the patience of Jesus with repeated need. The line at the door may have seemed endless. On after another, people came. The Gospels do not tell us that he hurried them through. They tell us he healed. Behind that brief word is the patience of divine compassion. Jesus did not love humanity in general, while being annoyed by particular sufferers. He loved the particular ones who came before him. The house of Simon became, for that evening, a kind of threshold between ordinary life and the kingdom. Inside, a woman had been lifted from fever. Outside, the city gathered with its burdens. The doorway held the meeting of private mercy and public mercy. What Jesus had done in the room became hope for those in the street. Then, before dawn, he rose to pray. This too belongs to the miracles. The works of power flow from the Son's communion with the Father. He does not let human demand become his master. He does not build his mission around popularity. He goes to deserted places, not because he lacks compassion, but because his compassion remains ordered by the Father's will. The crowd wants him to stay. The Father sends him onward. This rhythm protects the listener from imagining Jesus as merely swept along by need. He is moved with compassion, but not driven by panic. He is accessible, but not aimless. He heals at evening, prays before dawn, and continues the mission for which he came. It is also tender that the healings at evening include those oppressed by demons. The gospel world does not separate bodily suffering from spiritual suffering as though only one kind matters. Families brought every kind of pain to the door. Some bodies were fevered. Some minds were tormented. Some spirits were bound. Jesus received them all with authority. There is no hint that he needed to stir himself into power. The demons knew his command. The sicknesses left. The crowd saw many different wounds answered by one Lord. This variety matters because human suffering is varied too. No two burdens are exactly alike, yet all can be brought to Jesus. The city at the door is almost an image of the whole world. Behind every face is a story. Behind every story is some need for mercy. And at the center stands Jesus, not as a remote figure looking over humanity in general, but as the healer before whom each person may come. When the healings at the door were finished, Jesus asked his disciples to cross to the other side, and so they came down to the water. The Sea of Galilee could be beautiful in the evening. The hills around it softened in the fading light. Fishing boats moved across the water. Nets dried along the shore. Villages glowed with lamps as the day came to rest. But the same sea could change quickly. Winds could fall hard from the heights. Waves could rise and strike a boat until even experienced fishermen felt fear tightening their chests. One day, when evening had come, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." They took him in the boat as he was. Other little boats were also with him. The day had been full of teaching, crowds, and need. Jesus was truly human as well as truly divine, and the tiredness of the day rested on him. In the stern of the boat, he lay asleep on a cushion. Then the storm came. A great windstorm arose. Waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. The wood groaned. Water splashed over the sides. The disciples, some of them fishermen who knew these waters, fought against the chaos. Darkness deepened. The sea heaved. The boat that had seemed a familiar place became fragile beneath them. Jesus slept. That detail is astonishing. Not because he was unaware in a careless way, but because his rest reveals a peace deeper than circumstances. The storm was real. The danger felt real. The disciples' fear was not theatrical. Yet the Lord slept in the stern, while the wind raged around him. They woke him and cried out, "Teacher, don't you care that we are dying?" It is a human cry. Fear often turns danger into accusation. Do you not care? The disciples had seen his mercy for strangers, his patience with crowds, his authority over sickness. But in the storm, with water rising around their feet, the heart asked the ancient question again, "Are you with us here?" Jesus awoke. He rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." The wind ceased, and there was a great calm, not a gradual improvement, not a slow easing of weather, a great calm. The sea that had roared became quiet under his command. Waves settled. The boat steadied. The night opened around them with sudden stillness. The only sounds left may have been water dripping from soaked clothing, strained breathing slowing, and hearts learning a new kind of fear. Jesus said to them, "Why are you so afraid? How is it that you have no faith?" They were greatly afraid and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" That is the question the miracle leaves hanging over the water. Who then is this? The disciples had already followed him. They had heard his teaching. They had seen healings. But the storm widened their understanding. Sickness obeyed him. Demons obeyed him. Now wind and sea obeyed him. Creation itself knew his voice. The miracle is not only about the disciples being rescued from danger. It is about revelation. In Scripture, the Lord alone rules the raging sea. He stills the roaring of the waves. He makes a path through waters. When Jesus speaks and the sea obeys, the disciples stand before a mystery greater than safety. The one asleep in the stern is Lord of creation. This scene is deeply suited to the night, because many hearts know storms that come after evening. The day ends, the lights go out, and the mind begins to feel the wind. Worries rise like waves. Questions strike the side of the soul. The body is still, but inside there is weather. In such moments, the cry of the disciples may feel familiar, Lord. Do you not care? The gospel does not answer by denying the storm. It shows Jesus in the boat. He is not on a distant shore, shouting advice. He is with them in the vessel. His presence does not mean storms never rise. It means storms do not have the final authority. The disciples' fear was answered not by explanation, but by the voice of Jesus speaking peace into what overwhelmed them. Peace, be still. Those words belong first to the sea in the gospel, but they have comforted countless souls because they reveal the Lord who speaks them. He can command what we cannot control. He can bring calm beyond our ability to manufacture calm. He can reveal himself in the very place where we thought fear would swallow us. The sudden stillness after the storm may have been more awe-inspiring than the storm itself. The disciples had known danger before. Fishermen know weather. But this kind of obedience from creation was something else. The wind did not negotiate. The waves did not fade reluctantly. They obeyed, and the men in the boat were left with wonder. Faith grows that way sometimes, not by avoiding the sea, but by seeing Jesus rule the sea. Not by never feeling fear, but by discovering that fear is not Lord. Not by always understanding why the storm came, but by learning who's in the boat. The road of the miracles now crossed to the other side. There, beyond the storm, waited a man whose life had become another kind of tempest. Not wind and waves, but torment and isolation. The disciples had just seen creation. Obey Jesus. Soon they would see the powers of darkness tremble before him, and a man who had lived among tombs sit clothed, calm, and restored. The calm after the storm must have felt almost physical. The disciples had shouted over wind. Then suddenly there was nothing to shout over. The sea lay quiet under a sky that had seemed moments before to be collapsing upon them. The boat no longer rose and fell violently. The fear that had filled the vessel now had nowhere to go except into wonder. Jesus' question about fear was not meant to shame them into silence. It was an invitation to understand who was with them. Faith in the Gospels grows by recognition. If Jesus is only a teacher asleep in the stern, then the storm is ultimate. If he is the Lord whose word the sea obeys, then fear must be reinterpreted. The disciples had to learn not merely that Jesus could help them, but that his identity changed the meaning of danger. There are storms Jesus prevents, and storms through which he reveals himself. This one was not prevented. It became a classroom on the water, a night lesson in the authority of the sun. The disciples would one day face other storms: persecution, prison, martyrdom, the long labor of mission. The memory of the sea obeying him would not be wasted. The question, who then is this, is one of the sacred questions of the Gospels. It does not close the matter too quickly. It leaves space for awe. Sleep-friendly storytelling should not rush past awe, because awe is one of the ways the soul becomes quiet before God. The wind and sea obey him. Let the heart rest there. The phrase, peace, be still, also reveals that the peace of Jesus is not weak quietness. It is commanded stillness. It is the order of the Creator entering disorder. The storm does not become calm because it has tired itself out. It becomes calm because the Lord speaks. This matters for the restless heart. There is a kind of calm that depends on circumstances being easy, and that calm disappears when difficulty rises. The calm of. Jesus is different. It comes from his presence and authority. It can enter a boat, still wet from fear. It can settle over disciples who have not yet understood him. It can arrive suddenly where panic seemed reasonable. The disciples' awe after the storm is not less restful than the calm sea. In fact, holy awe can quiet the soul more deeply than mere comfort. To know that Jesus is greater than the storm is better than to know only that the storm has ended. The sea will have other winds, but the Lord of the sea remains. When the boat reached the other side, the land itself seemed to hold a sorrow. They came into the region of the Gerasenes, or Gadarenes, across from Galilee. It was a place with tombs nearby, slopes running toward the sea, and a man whose life had been overtaken by unclean spirits. The Gospels describe him with sober weight. He lived among the tombs. He wore no clothes for a long time. No one could bind him anymore, not even with chains. He had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he had torn them apart. Night and day, among the tombs and mountains, he cried out and cut himself with stones. This is not a scene to make into horror. It is a scene of deep human misery. A man made in the image of God was living among the dead. He was separated from family, community, peace, and his own right mind. Others feared him. Perhaps they had tried to restrain him. Perhaps they had given up. The tombs became his dwelling, and his life became a living picture of bondage. Then Jesus stepped out of the boat. The storm on the sea had not kept him away. The fear of the disciples had not turned him back. The isolation of the man did not repel him. Mercy crossed the water and came ashore. When the man saw Jesus from afar, he ran and bowed before him. The unclean spirits cried out, recognizing what others did not yet fully see. "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Darkness knew his authority. Jesus commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. He asked the name, and the answer was Legion, for many demons had entered him. The spirits begged not to be sent into the abyss and asked to enter a herd of pigs feeding nearby. Jesus gave permission. The herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned. The swineherds fled and told it in the city and countryside. People came to see what had happened. They found the man from whom the demons had gone out sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. That is one of the most peaceful images in the gospel miracles. Sitting, clothed, in his right mind, at the feet of Jesus. The man who had roamed among tombs now sat in the posture of a disciple. The man whose body had been exposed and wounded was covered. The man whose mind had been torn by torment was whole. The place that had echoed with cries now held stillness, and the people were afraid. It is strange, but true. They had feared the tormented man before, and now they feared the power that had restored him. The loss of the herd troubled them. The presence of such authority unsettled them. They asked Jesus to depart from their region. Jesus did not force himself upon them. He got into the boat. The restored man begged that he might go with him. Who could blame him? The only peace he had known in years was at the feet of Jesus. The one who had crossed the sea for him was leaving, and the man longed to remain near. But Jesus gave him another calling. "Go home to your friends," he said, "and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he had mercy on you. Go home." That word must have carried great tenderness. This man had been homeless among tombs, But Jesus sent him back to the living, back to people who had known his former misery, back to a community that had feared him, back not as a spectacle, but as a witness. Tell them mercy. The man went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis what great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. This miracle reveals the authority of Jesus over spiritual darkness. The demons are many, but they are not equal to him. They beg. He commands. Their violence is real, but his authority is greater. The man is not lost to him, though everyone else may have thought him beyond reach. It also reveals the restoring aim of deliverance. Jesus does not merely silence torment. He restores dignity. The man is clothed. He is calm. He is sent home. The goal is not only freedom from darkness, but return to communion, sanity, witness, and peace. For the night listener, this scene offers comfort to every person who knows someone who seems far away from peace. Some forms of suffering are hard to describe. Some bondage appears chaotic from the outside. Families can feel helpless. Communities can become afraid. The Gospels do not ask us to pretend darkness is not real. They show us Jesus crossing into the place where darkness has long seemed to reign. He is not intimidated. He does not mock the man. He does not avoid him. He does not reduce him to his torment. He sees the person beneath the bondage and restores him. There is a holy gentleness in the final image, a man at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. That is what mercy does. It brings people back to themselves before God. It quiets what was raging. It covers shame. It gives a testimony where there had only been cries. From the tombs, the road of Jesus turned again toward the desperate cries of families. A ruler of the synagogue would fall at his feet for a dying daughter. Along the way, a woman hidden in the crowd would reach for the edge of his garment. In one journey, two sorrows would meet him, a public father's fear and a private woman's shame. Jesus would be delayed, but not defeated. Mercy would pause for one and still arrive in time for the other. When Jesus restored the man among the tombs, he also restored a witness to the region. The request to follow him was natural, but the command to go home was merciful in another way. The man would return to the very places where his torment had been known. His testimony would not be an abstract claim. People could look at him and see the difference. The one who had cried among the tombs now spoke of mercy. This reminds us that deliverance is not always followed by removal from every difficult setting. Sometimes Jesus sends a person back with peace into a place that remembers their pain, not to be trapped again, but to bear witness. Go home to your friends. Tell what the Lord has done and how he had mercy on you. The story of mercy is meant to travel through restored lives. The people of the region asked Jesus to depart, and this is one of the sadder responses to a miracle. They saw restoration and still preferred distance. Perhaps the loss of the herd frightened them. Perhaps the authority of Jesus felt too disruptive. The gospel allows that possibility to stand. Not everyone welcomes mercy when mercy threatens what they are used to. A man healed can be received with less joy than expected. But Jesus left them a witness. He did not leave the region without testimony. The restored man became a lamp in a place that had asked the light to go away. That, too, is mercy. When Jesus crossed back over in the boat, a great crowd gathered to him by the sea. Among them came Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue. He was not a nameless face in the crowd. He held a place of responsibility in the worshipping community. People knew him. They may have respected him. But grief and fear have a way of bringing even honored men to their knees. He fell at Jesus' feet and begged him earnestly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her, that she may be made healthy and live." My little daughter. The phrase carries a father's heart, not a case, not an heir, not a social concern. His child, his girl, the one whose laughter filled rooms, whose small steps had once been counted with delight, whose life now seemed to be slipping away. Jesus went with him. The crowd followed and pressed around him. The road toward Jairus' house became crowded with bodies, urgency, curiosity, and hope. Somewhere in that crowd was a woman who had suffered with a flow of blood for 12 years. 12 years. As long as Jairus' daughter had lived, this woman had been bleeding. She had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. Her illness was physical, but also social and religious in its impact. The flow of blood made her unclean. It shaped her relationships, her worship, her place among people. The years had drained not only her body, but her resources, and perhaps her courage. She heard about Jesus. She came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. Her thought was simple and full of trembling faith. If I just touch his clothes, I will be made well. She did not come openly like Jairus. She did not fall before him at first. Perhaps shame had taught her to hide. Perhaps years of uncleanness had made her afraid of being noticed. She reached quietly, through the press of the crowd, toward the hem of his garment. Immediately the flow of her blood was dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, knowing in himself that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" The disciples were confused. The crowd was pressing on every side. Many had touched him in the ordinary sense. But Jesus knew the difference between accidental contact and the touch of faith. He looked around to see her who had done this thing. The woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had been done for her, came and fell down before him and told him all the truth. All the truth. What a phrase. 12 years of truth. Illness. Physicians. Money. Gone. Shame. Hope. The secret reach. The immediate healing. She told it in the open, before the crowd, before Jairus, before the disciples. What she had sought privately, Jesus brought into light, not to shame her, but to complete her restoration. "Daughter," he said, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Daughter. Only here in the Gospels does Jesus call someone by that tender name in this way. The woman who may have felt cut off is publicly claimed with family language. She is not a defiler of the holy. She is a daughter restored by faith. The healing in her body becomes peace in her soul and dignity in the community. But while he was still speaking, people came from the ruler of the synagogue's house. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why trouble the teacher any more?" The sentence must have struck Jairus like a stone. The delay, which had meant life for the woman, seemed to have cost the child. The road had stopped. The hope had failed. "Do not trouble him any more," they said. "Death has closed the matter." But Jesus, immediately hearing the words spoken, said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Only believe. Do not be afraid. Only believe." He allowed no one to follow except Peter, James, and John. They came to the house and found tumult, weeping, and loud wailing. The mourners had begun. The sound of death filled the house before Jesus entered. "Why do you make an uproar and weep?" he said. "The child is not dead, but sleeping." They laughed him to scorn. The laughter of unbelief is a bitter sound. They knew death. They thought Jesus did not, but he knew death more deeply than any of them, and he knew his authority over it. He put them all out. Then he took the child's father and mother and those with him and went in where the child was lying. The room became quiet. No crowd now. No loud wailing. Only the child, the parents, the 3 disciples, and Jesus. He took the child by the hand and said, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I tell you, arise." Immediately the girl rose up and walked, for she was 12 years old. They were amazed with great amazement. He commanded that something should be given her to eat. The tenderness of that command is easy to miss. The miracle is immense. A dead child raised. But Jesus also attends to the ordinary need of a living girl. Give her something to eat. Life has returned, and life must be nourished. The household's grief has turned to astonishment, but the child still needs bread. The interwoven miracles of Jairus' daughter and the woman with the flow of blood form one of the most beautiful movements in the Gospels. A girl 12 years alive, a woman 12 years ill, a public man with a private anguish, a hidden woman with a public shame. One falls at Jesus' feet before the crowd. One reaches from behind. One asks Jesus to come and touch. One believes a touch of his garment will be enough. One receives a delay, receives healing in the delay. One hears the word death. One hears the word daughter. Both are given mercy. Jesus is not hurried by urgency, and he is not defeated by delay. This matters deeply. To us, time can feel like an enemy. A delay can seem like disaster. But Jesus walks with authority over both the bleeding years and the dead child's room. He is not careless with Jairus while speaking to the woman. He is not indifferent to the child while restoring the daughter. His timing is mysterious, but his mercy is whole. The road continued. The cries of the blind would soon meet him beside pathways and in villages. Some would receive sight with a word. One man born blind would become a living sign in Jerusalem, and his opened eyes would expose the blindness of those who refused the light. The delay in the story of Jairus and the woman can feel painful, because both needs are urgent in different ways. Jairus fears losing a daughter. The woman has already lost 12 years. If Jesus hurries to the house, she remains hidden. If he stops for her, Jairus must stand inside the agony of waiting. The gospel lets these two sorrows meet on one road because Jesus is Lord over both. The woman tells him all the truth. That phrase is a healing of its own. Illness and shame often teach people to shorten their story, hide details, or speak only what seems acceptable. Jesus draws the hidden truth into a safe light. He does not expose her to humiliate her. He lets her testimony be heard, so that her restoration is not only secret but public. The crowd that may have considered her unclean now hears Jesus call her daughter. Jairus hears this while his own heart is under pressure. He has to watch another receive mercy while he is still waiting. That is one of the tender difficulties of faith. Sometimes we stand beside someone else's answered prayer, while our own need remains unresolved. Jesus does not forget Jairus in that moment. The word comes exactly when the terrible message arrives. Do not be afraid. Only believe. In the child's room, Jesus reduces the world to a holy smallness. Not the crowd, not the mockers, not the professional mourners, but Father, Mother, a few disciples, the child, and the Lord. Some mercies happen away from the crowd, where grief can be held gently. He takes her hand. He speaks to her as tenderly as one waking a child from sleep. Little girl, arise. From the hush of a room where a child had been given back her life, the road of mercy led on toward those who lived in another kind of darkness. The miracles of sight are among the most tender signs of Jesus. Blindness in the ancient world carried practical hardship and social dependence. A blind person often sat by the road, listening to footsteps and voices, asking for mercy from those who passed. The world came as sound, texture, warmth, and memory. Faces were known by voice, roads by dust and slope, days by heat and coolness. Night and day could blur into one long dependence. Jesus opened blind eyes in different ways. 2 blind men followed him, crying out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, they came to him. He asked, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They answered, "Yes, Lord." He touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith be it done to you." Their eyes were opened. In Bethsaida, people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. There is a deep personal kindness in that. The man was not treated as a display. Jesus led him aside. He touched his eyes. The healing unfolded in stages. At first the man saw people like trees walking. Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he saw clearly. Not every miracle unfolds in the same manner. Sometimes healing is immediate. Sometimes the Gospels show a process. Jesus is Lord of both. He is not bound by our preferred pattern. His mercy is personal, suited to the one before him. Then there is Bartimaeus. He sat by the road near Jericho, blind and begging. When he heard that Jesus of Nazareth was passing by, he began to cry out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." There is a stubborn beauty in that cry. Bartimaeus could not see Jesus passing, but he heard that mercy was near and would not let the crowd silence him. Those with sight tried to hush the blind man, but the blind man saw more truly than they did. He called Jesus Son of David, a messianic cry rising from the dust of the roadside. Jesus stood still. That detail is full of grace. The Son of David, on the road toward Jerusalem, stopped for a blind beggar calling from the side. He commanded that Bartimaeus be called. They said to him, "Cheer up, get up. He is calling you." Throwing aside his cloak, he rose and came to Jesus. His cloak may have been his mat, his covering, his familiar place of begging. He cast it aside because the call of Jesus had reached him. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "Rabboni, that I may see again." "Go your way," Jesus said. "Your faith has made you well." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus on the way. The miracle became discipleship. Bartimaeus did not merely return to his former life with improved sight. He followed Jesus on the road. The eyes opened by mercy turned toward the path of the Lord. But the fullest meditation on blindness and sight comes in the 9th chapter of John's Gospel, in the man born blind. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. The disciples asked whose sin had caused this, the man's or his parents'. Their question reflects a common desire to explain suffering by locating blame. But Jesus refused the narrow answer. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, he said, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. This did not mean the man's years of blindness were meaningless, or that suffering itself was good. It meant that Jesus would not let his life be reduced to blame. The man's story would become a place where the work of God was seen. Jesus spat on the ground, made mud with the saliva, anointed the man's eyes with the mud, and told him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." The man went, washed, and came back seeing. The simplicity of the sentence is beautiful. He went blind. He washed. He returned seeing. Light entered a life that had never known it. Colors, faces, sky, stone, water, hands, all opened before him for the first time. His neighbors were astonished. Some said he was the man who had sat and begged. Others said he only looked like him. He kept saying, "I am he." There is identity in that repeated testimony. I am the one. I am the man who was blind. I am the one who now sees. The miracle did not erase his history. It transformed it into witness. They brought him to the Pharisees, and because the healing had happened on the Sabbath, controversy rose again. The leaders questioned. His parents were questioned. The man was questioned more than once. The pressure increased, but his testimony remained wonderfully plain. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. They could debate categories. He could bear witness to mercy. As the chapter unfolds, physical sight exposes spiritual blindness. The man who had been blind becomes increasingly clear in his confession. The leaders who claim to see become harder in refusal. At last, they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and finding him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" The man asked who he was, that he might believe. Jesus said that he had both seen him, and that the one speaking with him was he. "Lord, I believe," the man said, and he worshipped him. The healing reached its true fullness there. Sight of the world became sight of Christ. The man born blind did not merely receive eyes. He received faith. He saw Jesus and worshipped. These miracles invite us to consider what true sight is. It is a gift to see the sky, a human face, the path beneath one's feet. It is a greater gift to see Jesus as he is. Some in the Gospels had working eyes and hardened hearts. Others, blind in body, cried out with more vision than the crowd around them. The opened eyes of the blind are signs of the light Jesus brings. He is not only a healer of sight, he is the light of the world. Those who come to him receive more than information. They receive illumination, recognition, and a new way of walking. The road from opened eyes leads naturally to opened hands. Crowds who saw his signs would follow him into lonely places. Hunger would grow as the day faded. Disciples would count loaves and fish and find almost nothing. Jesus would lift his eyes over the multitude with compassion, give thanks, break bread, and feed thousands until all were satisfied. The man born blind also shows the courage of simple testimony. He does not know how to answer every theological trap placed before him. He does not possess the power of his interrogators. He cannot control how his parents respond under pressure, but he knows the truth of the mercy he has received. One thing I know, though I was blind, now I see. There are times when faith must rest in the clarity of received grace. Not every question can be answered in the moment. Not every accusation deserves the same kind of reply. But the soul can say what Christ has done. I was blind. Now I see. I was outside. He called me. I was sinking. He took hold of me. I was hungry. He fed me. I was grieving. He came near. The man's journey there is almost like a second opening of the eyes. First, he sees the world. Then, through pressure and rejection, he comes to see Jesus more clearly. He moves from calling him the man Jesus to recognizing him as a prophet, to asking whether the leaders also want to become his disciples, to worshiping him as the Son of God. Physical sight becomes the beginning of spiritual sight. That is why the miracle belongs so deeply in a story of signs. Sight is not merely the ability to perceive objects. True sight is recognition of the light. The tragedy of the chapter is that some who can read, judge, and question remain blind to the one standing before them. The mercy is that the man cast out by them is found by Jesus. Bartimaeus' cloak also carries quiet meaning. For a beggar, a cloak could be shelter, garment, and place. Throwing it aside was a physical act of expectation. He rose as one who believed he would not need to return to the same old posture. His first movement toward Jesus already contained hope. When Jesus asks what he wants, he is not ignorant. He invites the man to speak desire plainly. There is dignity in being asked. The crowd had tried to silence Bartimaeus, but Jesus gives him voice. Rabboni, that I may see again. The request is simple, direct, and full of trust. After sight is restored, Bartimaeus follows Jesus on the way. This is the proper ending of the miracle. The gift of sight becomes the beginning of discipleship. He does not merely watch Jesus leave. He joins the road. In the gospel story, the road leads toward Jerusalem, which means the first sights of his restored eyes are bound to the path of the suffering king. Sight given by Jesus is meant to follow Jesus. Before the road reached Jerusalem, it wound through open and lonely country, where the crowds who followed grew hungry along the way. The wilderness has always been a place where human need becomes plain. In the wilderness, there are no markets close at hand, no full cupboards, no easy illusions of self-sufficiency. Israel learned hunger there and received manna from heaven. Centuries later, crowds followed Jesus into a lonely place, and hunger again became the setting for revelation. Jesus saw a great multitude coming to him. They came because they had seen the signs he did on those who were sick. They came on foot from towns and villages, carrying the weariness of ordinary life and the hope that God was visiting his people. Jesus went up the mountain and sat there with his disciples. The Passover was near, and the air of the story carries quiet echoes of Exodus, wilderness, bread, a multitude, a prophet greater than Moses, and the nearness of deliverance. When evening approached, the disciples saw the practical problem. The place was deserted. The hour was late. The people needed food. "Send the crowds away," they said, "so they may go into the villages and buy themselves food." Jesus answered, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." The disciples looked at what they had: 5 loaves and 2 fish. In John's telling, Andrew mentioned a boy who had them, but added the obvious question, "What are these among so many?" That question is deeply human. What is this small strength against such great need? What is this little bread against such a crowd? What is this small prayer, this limited resource, this tired heart, this brief life, among so many hungers? Jesus said, "Bring them here to me." That is the turning point. The little is not enough in the disciples' hands, but it is brought to Jesus. He commanded the crowds to sit down on the grass. Mark tells us they sat in groups, like garden beds, hundreds and fifties. The hillside became ordered with expectant people. Green grass beneath them, evening light over them. Children, perhaps, sitting close to parents. The disciples moving uncertainly among rows of faces. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He looked up to heaven. He blessed and broke the loaves. He gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. The bread multiplied in the giving. Hands received. Hands passed. Families ate. The disciples returned again and again with more. The small offering became abundance. The hungry were not given a token. They ate and were satisfied. When all had eaten, the disciples gathered the broken pieces left over, 12 baskets full. 12 baskets. More left after the meal than had existed before it began. The sign was overflowing with meaning. Israel's shepherd had come. The wilderness was being fed. The compassion of Jesus was not vague feeling, but bread placed into hungry hands. The number of men was about 5,000, besides women and children. Yet each one ate personally. Large miracles are easy to imagine as grand and impersonal, but bread is received one hand at a time. A mother breaks a piece for a child. An old man chews slowly. A disciple watches a basket that should be empty remain full. The smell of bread mingles with grass and evening air. The crowd saw the sign and perceived that Jesus was truly the prophet who comes into the world. But when Jesus perceived they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. He would not be made king according to their misunderstanding. He would not allow the miracle of bread to become a political seizure. His kingdom was real, but not grasped by crowd enthusiasm. The bread pointed deeper. Later, in the synagogue at Capernaum, Jesus would speak of the true bread from heaven. Moses did not give the ultimate bread. The Father gives the true bread. Jesus himself is the bread of life. Whoever comes to him will not hunger, and whoever believes in him will never thirst. The feeding miracle is therefore both compassion and sign. It meets immediate hunger and reveals deeper hunger. It fills stomachs and points to the Son who gives life to the world. There was also another feeding, the feeding of the 4,000. Again, Jesus saw a great crowd with compassion. They had stayed with him 3 days and had nothing to eat. He did not want to send them away fasting, lest they faint on the way. The disciples again wondered where enough bread could be found in such a deserted place. This time, there were 7 loaves and a few small fish. Jesus commanded the crowd to sit down. He took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to his disciples to set before the people. They ate and were filled. 7 baskets of broken pieces remained. The repetition matters. Human need returns. Human limitation returns. The disciples' question returns. And mercy returns also. Jesus is not abundant only once. His compassion is not exhausted by a previous miracle. He feeds again. The feedings reveal the heart of the shepherd. He does not only teach hungry people and send them away. He knows their bodies. He knows the weakness of the road. He knows that some may faint if they leave unfed. The Lord who speaks of eternal life also cares for bread at evening. For a listener at night, the hillside is a place of rest. Imagine the grass beneath the crowd, the fading sun, the quiet order of people sitting down because Jesus told them to, the small loaves placed in his hands, the upward glance, the blessing, the breaking, the baskets moving through the groups, hunger becoming satisfaction, not frenzy, not spectacle, but abundance passed gently from hand to hand. Bring them here to me. That line can gather our smallness into prayer. Bring the little strength. Bring the few loaves. Bring the limited patience. Bring the small beginning. Bring the offering that seems laughably insufficient for the need in front of it. In the hands of Jesus, little is not despised. The bread in the wilderness was followed by night on the sea. After feeding the multitude, Jesus sent his disciples ahead by boat while he went up the mountain to pray. The crowd faded. The hillside grew quiet. Night fell over the water. The disciples strained at the oars, and in the dark watches of the night, Jesus came to them walking on the sea. The feeding of the 5,000 also shows how Jesus involves his disciples in mercy that exceeds them. He could have placed bread directly into every hand without assistance. Instead, he blesses, breaks, gives to the disciples, and the disciples give to the crowd. Their insufficiency is not ignored, but it is taken into his abundance. They become carriers of what they could never produce. This pattern continues in the life of the church. The Lord provides the grace. His people carry what they have received. No disciple can create the bread of life. No preacher, parent, priest, teacher, or friend can manufacture divine mercy, but hands can receive from Christ and pass on what he gives. The miracle humbles the servant and feeds the crowd. The fragments gathered afterward are also gentle. Jesus does not waste abundance. 12 baskets are collected. The leftovers are not treated as insignificant because the miracle was large. In the kingdom, abundance is generous but not careless. What remains is gathered. The disciples, who had doubted what 5 loaves could do, end the day carrying baskets heavy with evidence. Perhaps that is one reason the memory of the feeding stayed so central. It was seen, touched, distributed, eaten, and gathered. The disciples did not merely watch from a distance. They carried the miracle in their own hands. They felt the weight of bread that should not have been there. The feeding of the 4,000 also deserves quiet attention because repeated mercy can be easy to overlook. The disciples had already seen bread multiplied, yet another hungry crowd still felt impossible to them. This should not make us despise them. It should make us honest about ourselves. We too forget yesterday's provision when today's need becomes large. Jesus does not refuse to feed because they have failed to understand the first sign fully. He feeds again. His patience with slow disciples is part of the miracle. The abundance is not only for the crowd, but also for those who are still learning who he is. The compassion of Jesus is practical. He knows that hungry people may faint on the way. This detail is deeply human. He sees not only the spiritual hunger that brought them to listen, but also the bodily weakness that may overtake them as they return home. He is the bread of life, and he also cares whether weary bodies have food for the road. After the bread was gathered and the baskets filled, evening settled over the hills. Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. Then he went up into the mountain by himself to pray. The multitude that had filled the grass with hunger and wonder was gone. The disciples were on the water. Jesus was alone with the Father. Night came. The boat was far from land, distressed by waves, because the wind was contrary. The disciples strained at the oars. The sea, that had once been calmed by his command, was again restless beneath them. They had obeyed Jesus by entering the boat, and yet obedience had led them into difficulty. That is important. A contrary wind is not always a sign that one has left the path of God. Sometimes the disciples are exactly where Jesus sent them, and still the night is hard. In the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came to them, walking on the sea. The fourth watch is deep night, the hours before dawn when strength feels thin and fear can grow large. The disciples saw him walking on the water and were troubled. They thought it was a ghost, and they cried out for fear. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." The words are simple, but they carry divine weight. It is I. The presence of Jesus is the answer before the circumstances change. The waves are still there when he speaks. The wind has not yet ceased, but fear is commanded to yield because he is near. Peter answered, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the waters." "Come," Jesus said. Peter got down from the boat and walked on the waters to come to Jesus. For a moment, a fisherman stood upon what should have swallowed him. His eyes were on the Lord. The impossible held beneath his feet because the command of Jesus held him. But seeing the wind, he became afraid. Beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and took hold of him. Again, immediately. The sinking disciple did not need a long speech before rescue. He needed the hand of Jesus. The Lord took hold of him and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" The rebuke was real, but so was the rescue. Peter's faith was little, but it was faith enough to cry out to the right Savior. He sank, but not beyond reach. He feared, but he was held. When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." This miracle, like the calming of the storm, reveals Jesus' authority over creation, but it also reveals his nearness in the dark. He sees the disciples from the mountain. He comes across the water. He speaks before they can understand. He calls Peter out. He rescues Peter when fear overtakes him. He receives worship in the boat. John's Gospel adds a quiet detail. When they were willing to receive him into the boat, immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. The night journey ended in arrival. For the soul, this story has long been a place of prayer. There are nights when we feel like disciples straining at oars, making little progress against a wind we did not choose. The darkness is deep. The shore is not near. The Lord seems to be on the mountain, hidden from sight, but the gospel says he sees. He comes. He is not kept away by the water that threatens us. Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. It is not courage built on self-confidence. It is courage built on recognition. If it is Jesus, fear is no longer allowed to interpret everything. If it is Jesus, the waves are not sovereign. If it is Jesus, even sinking can become the place where his hand is known. Peter's walk on the water is both bold and fragile. We should not mock him too quickly. He stepped out when others stayed in the boat. He walked until he looked from Jesus to the wind. He sank when fear divided his attention. Then he prayed one of the shortest and truest prayers in Scripture, "Lord, save me." That prayer is enough when spoken to the one who saves. The hand of Jesus reached him, not after he improved, not after he promised never to doubt again. Immediately, the boat, the sea, the wind, the cry, the hand, the worship, all gather into one sign. Jesus is Lord over what terrifies his disciples, and he is merciful toward little faith. After the sea, the road of mercy would widen beyond the expected borders of Israel. A woman from the region of Tyre and Sidon would come crying for her daughter. Her persistence would draw from Jesus a word of praise, and crumbs from the table would become enough for deliverance. Peter's sinking is not the end of his story, and that is a mercy for every listener who knows what it means to begin well and then falter. He steps out with real faith. He sinks with real fear. He cries out with real need. Jesus answers with real rescue. The scene holds all of this together without pretending that little faith is the same as no faith. The hand of Jesus is central. In many miracles, his hand appears, touching a leper, lifting a fevered woman, taking a dead child by the hand, touching blind eyes, touching ears and tongue, reaching for Peter in the sea. The hand is a sign of nearness. Jesus does not save Peter by speaking from a safe distance, while the disciple disappears beneath the waves. He reaches. The wind ceases only after they enter the boat. That means Peter's rescue comes before the environment fully changes. Sometimes the Lord's first mercy is not the removal of the storm, but the holding of the sinking one. The hand comes before the calm. The saving nearness arrives before the easy weather. Then worship happens in the boat. Truly you are the Son of God. The boat becomes a small sanctuary on the water. Wet disciples, exhausted bodies, fading wind, and the Son of God in their midst. The miracle has moved them from fear to worship, which is one of the great movements of the Christian life. The night on the sea, after the feeding, also shows Jesus as priestly intercessor in solitude. While the disciples strain below, he is on the mountain in prayer. The two scenes are not disconnected. The Lord who comes to them on the water is the same Lord who has been with the Father in the silence of the height. His action flows from prayer, and his prayer is never forgetful of those he loves. The disciples cannot see him from the boat, but he sees them. That is a gentle word for anyone who feels unseen in the effort of obedience. They are rowing because he sent them ahead. The wind is contrary, but his gaze has not left them. Hiddenness is not absence. When he comes walking on the sea, the very thing that threatens them becomes the path beneath his feet. The water that resists their boat carries him toward them. In the presence of Jesus, danger itself is placed under his authority. Leaving the waters of Galilee behind, Jesus withdrew toward the borderlands near Tyre and Sidon, into country that Israel often kept at a distance. The miracles of Jesus did not remain only where people expected them. He withdrew at times from the crowds and entered regions where Jewish expectation and Gentile need met in ways that unsettled easy boundaries. In the region of Tyre and Sidon, a Canaanite woman, or Syrophoenician woman, came to him. Her daughter was grievously tormented by a demon. A mother's cry can cross many barriers. She cried out, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed." She was not asking for herself alone, yet she said, "Have mercy on me." The child's torment was the mother's suffering. Love made the daughter's pain her own. At first, Jesus did not answer her a word. This silence is difficult, and the story should be handled with reverence. The Gospels are not careless with it. The silence reveals, tests, and draws forth faith. It also allows the disciples' discomfort to appear. They urged Jesus to send her away because she kept crying after them. He answered that he was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The order of salvation history matters. The promises had come through Israel. The Messiah came as Son of David, fulfillment of covenant, shepherd of the lost sheep. Yet the prophets had also spoken of nations coming to the light of Israel's God. In this encounter, the woman's faith stands at the edge of that widening mercy. She came and worshipped him, saying, "Lord, help me." 3 words, no ornament, no argument, need kneeling before mercy. Jesus answered with the image of children and dogs, saying it was not appropriate to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. The words can sound severe to modern ears, but within the scene they draw forth her humility and faith. She does not walk away offended. She does not deny Israel's place. She accepts the order and finds hope within it. "Yes, Lord," she said, "yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." What faith! She does not demand the table be overturned. She does not claim entitlement. She believes there is such abundance in Jesus that even a crumb is enough. A crumb of his mercy can deliver her daughter. A fragment from the table of Israel's Messiah is more powerful than the darkness tormenting her child. Jesus answered, "Woman, great is your faith. Be it done to you even as you desire." Her daughter was healed from that hour. Again, distance did not hinder him. The child was not present. The mother's faith came on behalf of another. The word of Jesus reached the daughter, and torment lost its hold. This miracle is tender because it reveals persistent faith. The woman keeps coming. She cries. She kneels. She receives a hard saying and turns it into prayer. She sees abundance where others might hear refusal. She trusts the mercy of Jesus beyond the boundaries that seem to stand before her. The disciples may have wanted quiet. Jesus wanted to reveal faith. Her plea also anticipates the mission that will later go to the nations. Israel's Messiah is not diminished when Gentiles receive mercy. His abundance is great enough for Israel and the nations. The table is not impoverished by crumbs that heal. The kingdom is wider than those present yet understand. For a listener at night, the phrase, "Lord, help me," may become a resting prayer. There are moments when longer prayers cannot be formed. The mind is tired. The heart is crowded. Need is too close. The woman shows that a short prayer can be mighty when it falls at the feet of Jesus. "Lord, help me." And her image of crumbs is not despair. It is confidence. She believes that the smallest mercy from him is enough. She believes his power is not reduced by distance, and his compassion is not exhausted by prior giving. The daughter is healed. The mother returns, in Mark's telling, and finds the child lying on the bed and the demon gone out. A house that had known torment now knows quiet. The gospel does not linger over the reunion, but we may reverently imagine the stillness. A mother entering, a daughter at rest, the oppressive presence gone, the air changed, the prayer answered. Mercy had crossed a border. The road would continue through gentile regions and back toward Galilee. Another man would be brought to Jesus, unable to hear and struggling to speak. Jesus would take him aside privately, away from the crowd, and restore hearing and speech with intimate care. The Canaanite woman's answer is one of the great examples of humble boldness. She does not approach with pride, but neither does she retreat into despair. She accepts the image Jesus gives and finds mercy within it. Even the crumbs are enough. Her humility is not weakness. It is faith that has found the abundance of the Lord and will not let go. The miracle also shows intercession in one of its most intense forms. The daughter is not able, at least in the story as told, to come and plead for herself. The mother comes in her place. She carries the daughter's misery in her own voice. This is what love often does. It prays when another cannot pray. It cries out when another is too bound, too young, too weary, or too lost to form the words. Jesus' praise of her faith is striking. Great is your faith. He says this to a Gentile woman in a scene where the disciples have been uncomfortable with her persistence. The kingdom is already overturning easy assumptions. Faith may appear in the person whom others want dismissed. The cry that irritates the disciples is precious to the Lord. When the mother returns and finds her daughter at rest, the gospel gives no long speech. It simply lets the peace of the house speak. The torment is gone. The child is lying there. A mother's prayer has been answered. Crumbs from the master's table have proved stronger than darkness. As Jesus turned back toward the Sea of Galilee, the crowds pressed in again, and among them they brought a man who lived shut inside silence. Some miracles of Jesus happen away from the noise, as though mercy itself asks for privacy. In the region of the Decapolis, people brought to him a man who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. They begged Jesus to lay his hand on him. Deafness can create a world of separation. Voices move, but do not arrive. Songs are seen on lips, but not heard. Warnings, laughter, prayers, the small tones by which affection is carried, all remain distant. A speech impediment adds another layer of frustration, the difficulty not only of receiving words but of giving them clearly. The people begged for a touch. Jesus took the man aside from the multitude privately. That detail is full of gentleness. He did not make the man into a public demonstration. He took him away from the staring crowd. The miracle unfolded in a language of touch the man could understand. Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears. He spat and touched his tongue. Then, looking up to heaven, he sighed and said, "Ephphatha," that is, "be opened." Immediately his ears were opened, the impediment of his tongue was released, and he spoke clearly. "Be opened." The command entered both silence and speech. The closed world opened. Sound arrived. Voice was released. The man who had struggled to hear and speak could now receive and answer. The sigh of Jesus matters. It is not a sigh of helplessness. It is the deep compassion of the Son entering the weight of human brokenness. He looks to heaven, sighs, and heals. The miracle is personal, bodily, tender, and full of the nearness of God. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. They were astonished beyond measure, saying, "He has done all things well. He makes even the deaf hear and the mute speak. He has done all things well." The phrase reaches back toward creation, where God saw what he had made and called it good. In Jesus, creation is being restored. Ears meant for hearing are opened. Tongues meant for praise are loosed. Human faculties disordered by the fall are touched by the Creator's mercy. There were other restoration miracles, each showing Jesus' personal attention. A mute man possessed by a demon was brought to him, and when the demon was cast out, the mute man spoke. The crowds marveled, saying nothing like this had ever been seen in Israel. Another time, a demon had made a boy unable to speak and had thrown him into destructive convulsions. The father cried out with one of the most honest prayers in the Gospels, I believe. "Help my unbelief." Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, took the boy by the hand, and raised him up. Again, the hand. Again, the lifting. Again, the mercy that restores a child to a father. The miracles of hearing and speech remind us that salvation is not abstract. God made human bodies. He made ears for sound, tongues for words, hearts for prayer, hands for blessing. Jesus restores human beings in their embodied lives. He does not treat the body as an inconvenience to the soul. He touches ears. He touches tongues. He takes hands. He feeds stomachs. He opens eyes. Yet the physical healing also carries a deeper sign. To hear truly is more than receiving sound. To speak truly is more than forming words. Israel had long been called to hear Israel. The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. The prophets cried out to a people who had ears but did not hear. The coming of Jesus brings the word of God near in flesh. Blessed are those who hear and keep the word. So when ears open and tongues are loosed, the miracles quietly point toward discipleship. The healed are invited not merely to sound, but to listening, not merely to speech, but to praise. For night prayer, "Be opened" can be a gentle petition. Lord, open what has closed in me. Open ears dulled by noise. Open a tongue that has forgotten praise. Open a heart narrowed by fear. Open the places where silence has become loneliness rather than rest. Jesus does not heal this man from a distance. He takes him aside. He communicates through touch. He looks to heaven. He sighs. He speaks the word. The man hears. The man speaks. The people marvel. And somewhere in the astonishment, another truth becomes clear. The Messiah's mercy reaches into every human faculty, every pathway of connection, every place where isolation has settled. The next miracle we follow will return to leprosy, but with a different emphasis. 10 men will cry for mercy from a distance. All will be cleansed as they go. Only one will turn back to give thanks. And in that returning, the gospel will show that healing is meant to lead the heart back to worship. The privacy of the deaf man's healing is a mercy worth receiving slowly. Jesus could have healed him in front of everyone with a public word. Instead, he takes him aside. For a man whose life had likely included confusion, under the gaze of others. This privacy may have been its own kindness. The Lord knows not only what to heal, but how to heal without crushing the person in the process. The gestures of Jesus are almost sacramental in their tenderness. Fingers to ears, touch to tongue, eyes lifted to heaven, a sigh, a word. The man receives through the body the sign of what Christ is doing. His closed places are addressed. His blocked speech is released. He is not hurried through mercy. He is personally attended to. The crowd's response, "He has done all things well," gathers the miracle into praise. It is not only that this one thing has been done well. The people sense a wider goodness. The works of Jesus carry the fragrance of creation restored. What was closed opens. What was bound is loosed. What was disordered is made whole. There are forms of deafness that are not physical, and forms of silence that have settled in the soul. A person may stop hearing hope. A person may lose the language of prayer. A person may feel unable to speak truth, praise, grief, or need. The miracle does not flatten these into the same thing as bodily deafness, but it does allow a prayer to rise. "Lord, say Ephphatha over the closed places in me. Be opened." On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus passed along the borders of Samaria and Galilee. The road itself held tension. Jews and Samaritans shared a complicated history, marked by division, suspicion, and old wounds. Yet suffering can gather people who might otherwise remain apart. In one village, 10 men who were lepers stood at a distance. They did what lepers were expected to do. They did not come close. Their condition kept them outside the normal circle of touch, worship, and household life. Yet, distance did not keep them from crying out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." 10 voices rose together. Perhaps some were Jewish and one was Samaritan. Perhaps their shared illness had created a sad community at the margins. They stood far off, but they called him Master. They asked not first for explanation, but for mercy. When Jesus saw them, he said, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." That command carried an invitation to faith. The priests were the ones who could confirm cleansing and restore a person to the community. But when Jesus spoke, the men were not yet visibly clean. They had to begin walking on the authority of his word. As they went, they were cleansed. The miracle happened on the road of obedience. One step, then another. The disease still present when they turned. The command of Jesus ahead of them. Then, as they went, cleansing came. Skin changed. Bodies restored. The impossible became true while they were walking. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back. He glorified God with a loud voice. He fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Weren't the 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? Were there none found who returned to give glory to God, except this stranger?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go your way. Your faith has healed you." The chapter is gentle, but it searches the heart. All 10 received mercy. Only one returned in gratitude. The 9 were truly cleansed. We should not deny the reality of their healing, but the one who returned showed the proper movement of a healed heart. Mercy should lead to worship. Cleansing should lead to thanksgiving. The gift should carry the soul back to the giver. The Samaritan's return is beautiful because he could have continued toward the priests with the others. He could have rejoiced privately. He could have hurried to receive official restoration. Instead, when he saw what had happened, gratitude turned him around. He came back to Jesus. He fell on his face at his feet. He gave thanks. Gratitude is not mere politeness in Scripture. It is a form of truth. It acknowledges dependence. It remembers the source. It refuses to let the gift become separated from the giver. The grateful heart is awake to mercy. For a sleep story, this scene offers a quiet invitation at night. The day may have held many small mercies that went unnoticed. Breath, food, a message, protection on a road, a kind word, strength for a difficult task, a prayer not yet answered, but carried. Perhaps the heart is tired and cannot list everything, but it can turn back. It can say, "Thank you, Lord." It can fall, even inwardly, at the feet of Jesus and give glory to God. The one who returned was a Samaritan, an outsider in the eyes of many. His gratitude exposes the possibility that those considered far away may sometimes see mercy more clearly than those who assume they are near. The kingdom unsettles pride and welcomes faith wherever it appears. The miracle also reveals that obedience may begin before evidence. Go show yourselves to the priests. As they went, they were cleansed. They did not wait until everything looked changed before taking the first step. Faith walked with the word of Jesus, and cleansing met them on the way. But the final word belongs to the one who returned. Where are the 9? It is not asked to crush the listener, but to awaken the heart. Do not receive mercy and forget. Do not be healed and hurry on as though the gift had no giver. Return. Give thanks. Let worship complete the movement of grace. The road to Jerusalem was still before Jesus, and the signs were growing weightier. The healings had shown his authority over sickness and uncleanness. The feedings had shown his compassion for hunger. The storms and seas had shown creation obeying his voice. But in Bethany, death itself would stand before him in the person of a beloved friend. There, Jesus would not heal from far away as he had done for the official's son. He would delay. He would come to a house already full of grief. He would speak with Martha. He would weep with Mary. And before a sealed tomb, he would cry, "Lazarus, come out." The 10 lepers also show how mercy can arrive while the road is still being walked. They are cleansed as they go. The change does not happen while they stand still demanding proof. It happens in motion, under command. Their obedience becomes the place where the miracle meets them. This is a gentle word for those who are waiting. Sometimes the next step comes before the full reassurance. Make the call. Offer the apology. Return to prayer. Go to the priest. Walk toward the word you have been given. Not because movement earns mercy, but because faith often receives while obeying. The one who returns does more than say thank you. He glorifies God with a loud voice and falls at Jesus' feet. His gratitude becomes worship. The healing of the body becomes the turning of the whole person toward the Lord. That is why his return is so important. The other 9 receive a gift. The one who returns enters the deeper meaning of the gift. It is possible to be blessed and still hurry past the blesser. This is not written to make wounded people afraid, but to wake the heart gently. Every mercy is an invitation to communion. Every answered prayer is a doorway into praise. The healed Samaritan shows the way back. The 10 lepers' distance is important. They are far off, yet Jesus hears them. Their separation does not make their prayer ineffective. Sometimes a person feels far off from worship, far off from peace, far off from the easy fellowship of others. But the cry for mercy can still reach him. Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Their shared cry also suggests a community formed by suffering. The one Samaritan is among the 10. Illness has placed them together beyond the usual divisions. The miracle then separates gratitude from mere benefit. All are cleansed, but the outsider returns. His faith shines not only in asking, but in remembering. When he falls at Jesus' feet, his posture resembles worship given by others who have recognized divine mercy. The healed body bends in thanksgiving. The voice once used to cry from a distance now glorifies God near the feet of Christ. Mercy has moved him from far off to near. From the gratitude of one healed man, the road turned at last toward a village where mercy would meet its deepest test, the grave itself. Bethany lay near Jerusalem, a small village with a household Jesus loved. There were 3 siblings there, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. The Gospels show them with warmth and individuality. Martha serving, Mary listening at the Lord's feet, Lazarus loved by Jesus, though he speaks no recorded word in the story. Their home had been a place of welcome, a place where friendship and discipleship met under one roof. Then Lazarus became sick. The sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick." They did not say, "the useful one, the worthy one, the one who has served you." They appealed to love. He whom you love. That was enough to bring the need before him. When Jesus heard it, he said that this sickness was not to death, but for the glory of God, that God's Son might be glorified by it. Yet he stayed 2 days in the place where he was. This delay is one of the most difficult and holy parts of the story. Jesus loved Martha, her sister, and Lazarus. John says that plainly. Therefore, when he heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed. In human reasoning, love hurries. In this gospel sign, love waits because a greater revelation is being prepared. The delay is not indifference. It is mystery within love. After 2 days, Jesus said to the disciples that they should go into Judea again. They were concerned because danger waited there. But Jesus spoke of walking in the day. Then he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going so that I may awaken him out of sleep." The disciples misunderstood, thinking sleep meant recovery. Jesus then told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Let us go to him." Even death does not make Lazarus beyond the reach of Jesus. When Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Many Jews had come to comfort Martha and Mary concerning their brother. The house was heavy with mourning. The village knew. The body was sealed away. Hope, in ordinary human terms, had ended. Martha heard that Jesus was coming and went to meet him, while Mary remained sitting in the house. "Lord," Martha said, "if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Her words are both grief and faith. She does not hide the ache. "If you had been here." Many believers know that sentence. Lord, if you had come sooner. Lord, if the answer had arrived earlier. Lord, if the sickness had turned. But Martha does not stop there, even now. Jesus said, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered with the faith of Israel's hope, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus then spoke one of the great revelations of his identity: "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will still live, even if he dies. Whoever lives and believes in me will never die." Do you believe this? Martha answered, "Yes, Lord. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, God's Son, he who comes into the world." Her confession stands like a lamp in the house of mourning. Then she went and called Mary secretly, saying, "The teacher is here and is calling you." Mary rose quickly and came to him. The mourners followed, thinking she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet. "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died." The same words as Martha, but carried with Mary's tears. Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping. He groaned in the spirit and was troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Lord, come and see," they said. Jesus wept. The shortest verse is one of the deepest wells. Jesus knew he would raise Lazarus. He knew the command he would soon speak. Yet he wept. He did not stand above grief, as though love should not feel loss. He entered the sorrow of those he loved. His tears sanctified human mourning. The Lord of life wept before the tomb. The Jews said, "See how he loved him." Others wondered why the one who opened the eyes of the blind could not have kept this man from dying. Jesus, again groaning within himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. "Take away the stone," he said. Martha, practical and honest, said, "Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said, "Didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see God's glory?" They took away the stone. The air around a tomb is unlike any other. Grief, finality, fear, memory, and the physical reality of death all gather there. The crowd stood back. The sisters watched. The disciples were near. The stone moved. Jesus lifted up his eyes and prayed, "Father, I thank you that you listen to me. I know that you always listen to me, but because of the multitude standing around I said this, that they may believe that you sent me." Then he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, his face wrapped with a cloth. Lazarus came out of the tomb. Death obeyed the voice of Jesus. The grave surrendered the man it had held. A body 4 days dead stood in the light, because the resurrection and the life had called him by name. "Free him," Jesus said, "and let him go." Even after the miracle, others were invited to participate in restoration. The grave clothes had to be removed. The man restored to life had to be unbound. Those who had mourned him now touched the wrappings and saw the impossible with their own hands. Many believed in Jesus because of what he had done, but some went away to the Pharisees and told them. The chief priests and Pharisees gathered a council, the sign that should have led to worship hardened opposition. From that day forward, they took counsel to put him to death. Lazarus's resurrection is the great sign before the Passion. It reveals Jesus' authority over death and it also hastens the path toward his own death. The one who calls a man out of the tomb will soon be laid in a tomb himself. The one who commands others to remove Lazarus's grave clothes will leave his own linen cloths lying in an empty place. For the night listener, Bethany holds both tears and hope. Jesus delays, yet loves. He speaks truth to Martha. He calls Mary. He weeps. He commands the stone to be removed. He prays to the Father. He calls the dead. He restores the beloved friend to his sisters. If you stand in grief, the tears of Jesus matter. If you stand before what seems final, the voice of Jesus matters. If you feel bound, the command "free him and let him go" matters. The gospel does not promise that no believer will pass through death in this age. Lazarus would die again one day, but the sign reveals the one in whom death itself is not final. I am the resurrection and the life. That is the center of Bethany. And now the road narrows toward Jerusalem. The miracles will not cease entirely, but the passion draws near. A blind beggar near Jericho will still cry for mercy. A fig tree will become a sign of judgment. And in the garden of arrest, even as his enemies come with swords and torches, Jesus will heal one last wounded ear. The sisters of Bethany also show two faithful ways of grieving before Jesus. Martha comes with words that move toward confession. Mary comes with tears that draw forth his tears. Jesus receives both. He does not tell Martha that theology has no place in grief. He does not tell Mary that tears have no place before faith. He gives revelation to one and weeps with the other. This matters because grief is not one single shape. Some people speak, some sit, some ask questions, some cry. Some organize the household because there is work to do. Some fall at his feet. In Bethany, Jesus is Lord over all these forms of sorrow. He meets each sister truthfully. The command to take away the stone invites human participation at the edge of divine power. No one there can raise Lazarus. Only Jesus can do that. But someone can move the stone. Someone can later unwrap the grave clothes. The miracle is wholly his, yet he allows human hands to serve around it. This is often the way mercy works. We cannot create resurrection. We can roll away what he tells us to move. We can help unbind those he has called to life. Lazarus comes out still wrapped. That, too, is tender. New life may need unbinding. A person restored by grace may still need help walking freely from old wrappings. Jesus does not shame this process. He commands the community, free him and let him go. Bethany also shows that the love of Jesus does not prevent him from speaking promises that stretch beyond immediate relief. Martha speaks of the last day, and Jesus does not deny that hope. He deepens it. I am the resurrection and the life. The future hope of God's people is standing in front of her in person. This is one of the great patterns of John's Gospel. A human need becomes the doorway to a revelation of who Jesus is. Hunger opens toward the bread of life. Blindness opens toward the light of the world. Death opens toward the resurrection and the life. The miracle is not less real because it points deeper. It is more real because it reveals the person who gives the sign. When Jesus weeps, we learn that divine sovereignty does not make compassion distant. He is not embarrassed by tears. He does not treat grief as unbelief, simply because resurrection is near. He weeps while knowing he will act. This means the tears of believers are not outside his fellowship. He can both promise life and share sorrow. The raising of Lazarus changed the atmosphere around Jesus. The signs had been many before, but this one stood close to Jerusalem and close to the rulers who feared his influence. A man dead 4 days had come out of a tomb. Many believed. The council gathered. Plans hardened. The Passover drew near. Still, mercy did not vanish from the road. As Jesus approached Jericho, or as he went out from it in the Gospel accounts, blind Bartimaeus and another blind man cried out. We have already rested with Bartimaeus, but his place near the road to Jerusalem deserves to be remembered here again. He heard that Jesus was passing by and shouted, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. The crowd rebuked him, but he cried out all the more. Jesus stopped. On the road toward his suffering, he stopped for a blind man. The weight of the approaching cross did not make him indifferent to one voice in the dust. He asked what Bartimaeus wanted. He gave sight. Bartimaeus followed him on the way. The miracle becomes a kind of living parable. As Jerusalem's leaders grow blind in hardness, a blind beggar sees the Son of David. As the road leads toward rejection, the healed man follows. Near that final week, another sign appears in a different form, the fig tree. Jesus saw a fig tree by the road and found no fruit on it, only leaves. He spoke a word of judgment, and the tree withered. This sign is not a healing, and so it feels different from the others. Yet it belongs near the road to the cross, because it reveals that the authority of Jesus is not only tender restoration, but also holy judgment. Leaves without fruit cannot deceive him. Religious appearance without faithful response stands exposed before the king. The disciples marveled. Jesus used the moment to teach faith, prayer, and forgiveness. Even signs of judgment in his hands become invitations to reality before God. Then came the final night. After supper, after the words of the upper room, after the prayers and warnings, Jesus went with his disciples across the Kidron to a garden. Judas knew the place. He came with a band of soldiers and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, with lanterns, torches, and weapons. The garden was full of human confusion and divine obedience. Jesus came forward, knowing all things that were coming upon him. He asked whom they were seeking. They answered, Jesus of Nazareth. He said, I am he. They drew back and fell to the ground. Even in the hour of arrest, his authority stood unbroken. Peter, with a sword, struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. It is such a human moment. Fear tries to defend the kingdom by violence. Loyalty, mixed with misunderstanding, reaches for a blade. But Jesus rebuked the act. Put your sword back into its place. Shall I not drink the cup which the Father has given me? Then Jesus touched the ear and healed him. Consider the mercy of that final miracle before the cross. The wound belonged to one who had come with the arresting party. Malchus was not a disciple seeking healing. He was part of the company that came to seize Jesus. Yet the hands about to be bound healed him. The Lord, who could have summoned legions of angels, instead restored the ear of a servant wounded by a disciple's fear. This is the mercy of Jesus at the edge of his passion. He does not allow his kingdom to be defended by the sword. He does not let violence from his own followers stand as the last word in the garden. He heals an enemy's wound and then gives himself into the hands of those who came to take him. The miracles, gathered across the Gospels, now shine with new depth. The one who turned water into wine will soon speak of the cup. The one who healed servants will himself take the form of a servant. The one who touched lepers will be treated as one rejected and cast out. The one who forgave sins will bear sin. The one who calmed storms will stand silent before accusers. The one who fed crowds with bread will give his body. The one who opened blind eyes will be blindfolded and struck. The one who raised Jairus' daughter and Lazarus will enter death freely. The miracles are not abandoned at the cross. They are fulfilled in the self-giving love of the one who performed them. The greatest sign is not merely that Jesus can stop suffering. It is that he enters suffering to overcome sin and death from within. His power is not contradicted by the cross. His power is revealed there in the form of obedient love. Even at his arrest, his hands still healed. That line can carry us gently toward the closing reflection. The miracles of Jesus are signs of who he is: compassionate, holy, authoritative, humble, and divine. He does not perform empty spectacle. He reveals the Father. He brings the kingdom near. He restores what is broken and exposes what refuses the light. The garden darkens. The torches move. The disciples scatter. Jesus is led away. But the mercy seen in the miracles will not be defeated by the darkness of that night. The voice that called Lazarus out will pass through death and rise. The hands that healed Malchus will bear wounds that become peace for the disciples. The signs point beyond themselves to the crucified and risen Lord. The miracles of Jesus can also be heard as one continuous movement of mercy through ordinary places: a wedding feast, a father's road, a leper's dust, a crowded house, a Sabbath synagogue, a fisherman's home, a storm-tossed boat, a hillside of hungry people, a woman's trembling touch, a ruler's grieving house, a blind man's roadside, a Gentile mother's plea, and a friend's tomb. None of these places are wasted. The gospel does not need perfect settings. It reveals Christ in the real settings where human beings actually suffer, hope, misunderstand, wait, and pray. That is part of the comfort of these signs. They do not happen only in places that feel religious. They happen where families are embarrassed, where servants are busy, where children are sick, where work is interrupted, where people are excluded, where houses are too crowded, where weather is dangerous, where grief is loud, and where death seems final. The kingdom of God comes near in the middle of life, as it truly is, and Jesus remains himself in every scene. He is never less holy because he is gentle. He is never less merciful because he is authoritative. He is never less sovereign because he weeps. He never uses power to avoid love, and he never uses love to deny truth. Every sign is perfectly fitted to the person before him and perfectly faithful to the Father who sent him. So as these miracles are heard slowly, they can become more than remembered events. They can become places where the listener rests. One may return to Cana when joy has gone thin, to Capernaum when the house feels sick, to the lake when fear rises, to the road when prayer has been silenced by others, to Bethany when grief asks hard questions. The Gospels give these places to the church as holy memory, and in holy memory, faith is strengthened. Near the cross, the signs become quieter but sharper. Bartimaeus sees and follows. The fig tree warns against fruitless appearance. Malchus is healed in the garden. None of these moments is accidental. They gather the whole miracle ministry into the final revelation of Jesus' identity. The healing of Malchus is especially luminous because it happens when no one would have expected mercy to move outward. The disciples are confused. The arresting party has come with weapons. Betrayal is standing nearby. The hour is dark. Yet Jesus' last healing before the cross is for a man aligned with those who seize him. That is not weakness. That is the strength of a kingdom not ruled by retaliation. The sword wound is answered by touch. Peter's fear is corrected. Malchus' ear is restored. Jesus' cup remains before him. The miracle does not cancel the passion. It reveals the spirit in which he enters it. He will not wound his way to victory. He will heal, surrender, suffer, and overcome by obedient love. When we look back across all the miracles from the garden, we see that they have been teaching this all along. The power of Jesus is always holy love. It restores, feeds, cleanses, frees, and raises. It never becomes vanity. It never becomes cruelty. It never becomes a way for Jesus to avoid the Father's will. The miracles lead us to the cross, and the cross reveals the depth of the mercy that made the miracles possible. The signs near the cross also remind us that miracles are not an escape from the harder obedience of love. Jesus could still heal in the garden, but he would not use power to avoid the cup. He could command angels, but he chose surrender. He could restore Malchus's ear, but he allowed his own body to be wounded. This is why the miracle ministry must be heard together with the passion. Without the cross, the miracles might be misunderstood as simple displays of divine ability. With the cross, we see their heart. The one who heals is the one who gives himself. The one who feeds is the one who is broken like bread. The one who raises the dead is the one who lays down his life and takes it up again. The miracles are therefore not less comforting because the cross comes after them. They are more comforting. They show that the Lord who enters suffering with power also enters suffering with sacrifice. He is not only able to remove burdens, he is willing to bear the greatest burden for the salvation of the world. As the night grows quieter, we can listen once more to the shape of the whole journey. The miracles of Jesus are many, yet they are not scattered. They move like a river through the gospel landscape. Sometimes the river is quiet, as at Cana, where the servants know more than the guests. Sometimes it is public, as on the hillside, where thousands eat and are satisfied. Sometimes it enters a house. Sometimes it crosses a sea. Sometimes it stops at the roadside. Sometimes it stands before a grave. In every place, the kingdom comes near, not as an idea only, but as the reign of God touching bodies, families, meals, weather, minds, and death itself. The kingdom is seen when shame is spared at a wedding. It is seen when a child lives, when a servant rises, when a leper returns, when a paralyzed man walks, when a Sabbath becomes release, when a city gathers at a door and finds healing. This is why the miracles should not be heard merely as proofs. Though they do reveal who Jesus is, they are also foretastes. They show in small and brilliant scenes what God intends for his creation. The blind see, the lame walk, the unclean are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news preached to them. The broken world meets its rightful king, and wherever he places his hand, the future restoration shines for a moment inside the present age. But the future is not fully here yet. The Gospels are honest about that. Not every sick person in the land is healed in the narrative. Not every funeral is interrupted. Not every hostile heart believes. Jesus withdraws. Jesus moves on. Jesus tells some to silence. Jesus refuses to turn stones into bread for himself, though he multiplies bread for others. He will not be made king by force after feeding the crowd. He will not leap from the temple to impress the watching world. His miracles obey his mission, and his mission leads to the cross. That restraint is part of his glory. Power is most beautiful when it is perfectly obedient to love. Jesus never uses power to flatter himself. He does not perform to satisfy curiosity. He does not turn mercy into theater. When he acts publicly, the act is still holy. When he acts privately, the act is still powerful. The same Lord who commands a dead man to come out also takes a deaf man aside so that his healing is not swallowed by the crowd. The miracles also teach us that faith is relational before it is heroic. The official believes a word. The centurion trusts authority. The leper kneels. The friends carry. The woman touches. Jairus waits. Bartimaeus cries out. The Canaanite mother persists. The Samaritan returns. Martha confesses. Peter sinks and prays. None of these people come as perfect examples polished beyond recognition. They come as human beings with fear, need, courage, confusion, love, and hope. Jesus receives them without becoming less truthful. He may ask a searching question. Do you want to be made well? He may draw hidden faith into the open. Who touched me? He may test persistence through silence. He may challenge fear. Why are you afraid? He may call for the stone to be moved before anyone feels ready. Faith is not coddled, but it is held. It is summoned into deeper trust by the one who is himself faithful. There is also a quiet invitation to the community around the miracle. Servants fill the jars. Friends carry the mat. Disciples distribute the bread. Someone takes away the stone. Someone unwraps Lazarus. People bring the deaf man. People tell Bartimaeus to rise because Jesus is calling him. Even when Jesus alone performs the divine work, human hands are often invited to serve at the edges of mercy. This is a beautiful pattern for the church and for any household of faith. We cannot make water into wine, but we can fill the jars. We cannot forgive sins by our own authority, but we can carry a friend to Jesus. We cannot multiply bread from nothing, but we can place the little we have in his hands and pass on what he gives. We cannot raise the dead, but when he calls someone into life, we can help remove the wrappings that still cling. The miracles also reveal that Jesus sees both crowds and individuals. A multitude can be fed, and one woman can be noticed. A whole city can gather at the door, and a single fevered woman can be lifted by the hand. Thousands can sit on the grass, and one blind beggar can stop the road. The Lord is never forced to choose between compassion for the many and attention to the one. His mercy is spacious enough for both. That is restful to remember. We often fear being lost in the crowd, or we fear that our private need is too small beside the world's grief. The Gospels answer with Jesus. He sees the multitude and has compassion. He sees the one who touches the hem. He hears 10 lepers from a distance and notices the one who returns. He sees Martha's confession and Mary's tears. No person disappears into the mass of humanity before him. Finally, the miracles teach that every lesser restoration points toward the greater one. Wine at Cana points toward the joy of the wedding feast of the Lamb. Bread in the wilderness points toward the true bread from heaven. Opened eyes point toward the light of Christ. Cleansed lepers point toward full communion. Calmed seas point toward creation at peace. Raised children and Lazarus point toward the resurrection. Healed bodies point toward the day when death, mourning, crying, and pain will be no more. So the miracles are not only past mercies, they are promises in motion. They show the character of the Lord who will finish what he has begun. The world is not yet fully healed, but the healer has come. Death still wounds, but the resurrection and the life has stood before a tomb and called a man out. Storms still rise, but the sea has heard his voice. Hunger still exists, but the bread of life has been given for the world. The signs also help the listener hold together tenderness and majesty. Jesus is gentle with the fearful, but he is never merely soft. He commands storms, rebukes demons, exposes unbelief, and calls the dead. He is majestic, but never remote. He notices a secret touch, receives a mother's plea, takes a child by the hand, and asks that she be given food. The Gospels do not divide these qualities. In him, majesty bends low without ceasing to be majesty, and tenderness rules creation without ceasing to be tender. That balance is part of why the miracles bring peace. A soul does not rest deeply in a Lord who is powerful but cold, nor can it rest deeply in kindness that has no authority over what threatens us. The peace of the gospel comes because Jesus is both. The wind obeys him, and children are safe with him. Death yields to him, and mourners find him weeping beside them. The unclean are cleansed by him, and the ashamed are not crushed in his presence. So the journey through the miracles is also a journey into trust. We learn, scene by scene, that nothing human is too small for his compassion, and nothing broken is too great for his command. The heart can grow quiet there. The night can receive that truth. The listener can lay down the need to manage every fear, and instead remember the Lord who walks on the sea and enters the house. There is one more quiet pattern. Jesus often turns interruption into revelation. A wedding problem becomes the first sign. A blocked doorway becomes a revelation of forgiveness. A delay on the road becomes healing for a hidden woman, and a deeper call to faith for Jairus. A hungry crowd becomes a sign of heavenly bread. A funeral becomes a disclosure of resurrection and life. What seems like interruption to human plans becomes, in his presence, a place where the Father is made known. That can steady the heart at night. Much of life feels interrupted. Plans shift. Bodies weaken. People call for help when we thought the day was ending. Grief enters houses where joy had lived. But the gospel shows that Jesus is not mastered by interruption. He receives what comes before him and turns it toward mercy, truth, and glory. The road is not derailed by need. In his hands, need becomes the place where grace is seen. The miracles also teach patience with partial understanding. The disciples do not understand everything while they are living it. They distribute bread before they understand the bread of life. They fear the storm before they understand the Lord in the boat. They see Lazarus raised and still do not yet grasp fully the resurrection that will come through the cross. Jesus keeps teaching them. He keeps bringing them along. He is patient with those who are still learning. So the listener does not need to understand every mystery tonight. It is enough to walk the road with him. It is enough to hear his words, watch his mercy, and let faith deepen quietly, the way dawn slowly lightens the sky before the sun is fully seen. And in that slow deepening, the night itself becomes a place of quiet discipleship, held under his mercy. For the listener drifting toward rest, this means the miracles can be held not as noise, but as assurance. The Lord is compassionate. The Lord is able. The Lord is wise. The Lord is not hurried. The Lord is not indifferent. The Lord is not defeated. And the Lord who once walked among the sick, the hungry, the grieving, and the afraid still reigns in mercy. As the miracles gather behind us like lamps along the gospel road, one truth shines through them all. Jesus is merciful, not vaguely merciful, not merely kind in sentiment, merciful in action, merciful with hands, words, footsteps, tears, and authority. He comes near to actual suffering. He does not heal abstractions. He heals people. At Cana, he preserved joy and revealed glory in quiet abundance. In Galilee, he spoke a word, and a child lived miles away. He praised the faith of a centurion and healed a servant by command. He touched the leper and made clean what others feared. He forgave the paralysed man and then gave strength to his limbs. He restored hands, backs, bodies, and hope on the Sabbath. He lifted Peter's mother-in-law from fever and received the sick at evening when the whole city gathered at the door. He rebuked the storm, and the sea became still. He crossed into a place of tombs and returned a tormented man to peace, clothing, sanity, home, and witness. He stopped for a woman, hidden in a crowd, and called her daughter. He entered the room of a dead child and told her to arise. He opened blind eyes, and some who had never seen light came to see him as Lord. He fed thousands in the wilderness, not with barely enough, but with baskets left over. He walked on the sea in the deep night, and stretched out his hand to a sinking disciple. He praised the faith of a Gentile mother who believed crumbs from his table were enough. He opened ears and loosed tongues. He cleansed 10 lepers and welcomed the gratitude of the one who returned. He wept at the tomb of Lazarus and then called his friend into life. He healed Malchus in the garden, even while giving himself into the hands of those who came to arrest him. The miracles reveal his authority over sickness, sin, demons, nature, hunger, blindness, uncleanness, disability, torment, and death. But they also reveal his heart. Power without compassion would terrify. Compassion without authority would sympathize but not save. In Jesus, compassion and authority are perfectly one. He does not perform empty spectacle. He is not a magician. He refuses the kind of sign-seeking that wants marvels without repentance, bread without faith, glory without the cross. His miracles are signs of the kingdom, and the kingdom calls for trust, conversion, gratitude, and worship. Some who saw believed, some who saw resisted. This too is part of the gospel's honesty. Miracles do not remove the need for faith. They reveal the light, and then hearts are shown by how they respond to that light. For the weary listener, the miracles can become places of rest. If your joy feels thin, remember Cana. If someone you love is far beyond your reach, remember the healing word. If shame has kept you at a distance, remember the leper touched by Jesus. If you cannot carry yourself, remember the friends who opened the roof. If your strength is withered, remember the hand stretched out. If you have been bent low for years, remember the daughter of Abraham standing straight. If fever has made the house quiet, remember the hand that lifts. If the storm is loud, remember the voice that says, "Peace, be still." If darkness has tormented a life, remember the man sitting clothed and in his right mind. If you have reached secretly through the crowd, remember the word daughter. If hope seems delayed, remember Jairus. Do not be afraid. Only believe. If you are hungry in a lonely place, remember the bread blessed and broken. If you are sinking, remember the hand stretched out immediately. If your prayer is only, "Lord, help me," remember the mother whose daughter was healed. If your heart forgets gratitude, remember the Samaritan who returned. If you stand beside a tomb, remember the tears and the voice of Jesus. And if you wonder what all these signs finally mean, look to the cross and the empty tomb. The greatest sign is not separate from the miracles. It is their fulfillment. The Lord who gave life to others laid down his own life. The Lord who raised Lazarus rose himself, never to die again. The Lord who said peace to the storm came to his disciples after the resurrection and said, "Peace be to you." The miracles show the kingdom arriving in glimpses. The resurrection shows the dawn that will not fade. The same Jesus who walked through Galilee and Judea is living still. He is not a memory locked in ancient pages. He is the crucified and risen Lord. His mercy remains real. His authority remains complete. His heart remains compassionate. He still receives the weary, forgives sinners, strengthens the weak, comforts the grieving, and speaks peace over fearful souls. We do not command him. We trust him. We do not reduce him to the gifts he gives. We worship him as Lord. We do not pretend every prayer is answered in the way we expect or at the time we would choose. Bethany teaches us that love may delay for reasons hidden from us. Gethsemane teaches us that the cup may not always pass. Calvary teaches us that redemption can come through suffering. Easter teaches us that death does not have the final word. So rest now in the mercy that walked among us. Let the road of miracles grow quiet behind you. Let Cana's jars stand full. Let the fevered room become peaceful. Let the sea settle. Let the hillside grass hold the satisfied crowd. Let Bartimaeus follow with opened eyes. Let the healed daughter eat. Let the grateful Samaritan kneel. Let Lazarus step into light. Let the garden hold the memory of a wounded ear restored by the hands of the Savior. This has been the Shepherd's Bible. May the Lord Jesus Christ, who touched the unclean, fed the hungry, calmed the storm, opened the eyes of the blind, and called the dead to life, speak peace over your heart tonight. May his mercy be near as you rest. May his word be stronger than fear. May his presence be the quiet in your room, the shelter over your sleep, and the hope that waits for you when morning comes. And may the same Lord who once walked the roads of Galilee lead you gently, faithfully, and tenderly into his peace.